What can you do against a lunatic who is more intelligent than yourself, who gives your arguments a fair hearing, and then simply persists in his lunacy? You had to have known we're going to get a lot of Orwell today, but oddly enough, he's not the only high literary figure we're going to be touching on. But we're going to lead with Mr. Blair. What can you do against a lunatic who is more intelligent than yourself, who gives your arguments a fair hearing, and then simply persists in his lunacy? It doesn't even have to be lunatic in the conventional sense. All of us, every single one of us, without exception, particularly over the course of the past 3 years, and particularly over the course of the last year, have had a friend, a loved one, a family member, my term OIP, an otherwise intelligent person, to whom you present a series of irrefutable facts, and yet they persist in their lunacy. It's damned frustrating, and you may be inclined to cut such people loose, and if those people reach a level of toxicity in your life, it would be the right move to cut them loose. I have taken on the strategy myself of disengaging. What I have realized is that these people are not to blame necessarily for persisting in their lunacy. Their ignorance, certainly, they are to blame. But in this perception of their lunacy, it may not be their responsibility, because the minds that they think they are exercising may not belong to them anymore. You guys know that propaganda, the human mind, the nature of human psychology, and the methods and effectiveness of those methods in controlling it, mind control, if we want to coin a tinfoil hat phrase. After all, I am the dollar store Alex Jones. The control of the human mind, the malleability of the human mind, as spoken of by O'Brien at the Ministry of Truth in George Orwell's 1984, has always fascinated me. From the time I was a young child and watched how grown adults, ostensible thinking creatures, could be misled by something that in my childish innocence I saw as being perfectly obvious. Maybe what we need is to get back to some of that childlike innocence on a number of levels, but I digress. The exercise of mind control itself has been something that has fascinated all manner of governments, all manner of cultures throughout the years, from basic hypnosis and, of course, thought to be a tinfoil hat prospect until you look into things like the MK Ultra program, Operation Artichoke, MK Ultra, MK Delta, MK Naomi. There is a series, I believe, still streaming on Netflix called Wormwood. You should look into that, and you should binge watch that series, because it goes into an actual CIA operative who was suicided for the nature of his potential to expose involvement in that series of experiments, the things that our own government has done, borrowing from other totalitarian regimes to control the minds of its own populace. And now, with technology, we are on the edge. You guys know how I feel about St. Elon, but the Neuralink thing terrifies me. I deify no one. We are on the precipice of a culture where it's not an inexact science anymore. You see, mind control has always been practiced on a lower level, but now technology has evolved to the point where they can actually reach inside your head. Things that O'Brien at the Ministry of Truth could not have even dreamed of. What did O'Brien say? Power is in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in new shapes of your own choosing. And we've gotten very, very good at that. Once upon a time, it took beatings, it took waterboardings, it took torture It took brainwashing methods that have been refined over the years. Every new war, every new authoritarian regime has refined the science in tearing human minds to pieces and putting them together again in shapes of their own choosing. But it no longer requires the violence. It no longer requires the beating. It no longer requires the torture. And it barely even requires a nudge. Most of us step into it voluntarily without even realizing that our minds, the reins thereof, the steering wheel, the controls, are being voluntarily handed off to people who no doubt do not have our best interest in mind. Again, Orwell, doublethink means the power to hold two contradictory beliefs in one's mind simultaneously and accepting both of them. I guarantee you, if I handed you pen and paper right now, every single one of you watching this program would be able to write down 5 examples right off the top of your heads. But here's the sinister nature of it. Some of you, okay, let's be fair, maybe 3 of you who are watching this program are of liberal or leftist political persuasions, and you would also be able to write down those 5 examples right off the top of your head, and they would be in direct polarity with the majority of my audience. Does that mean one is right and the other is wrong? No. What I submit to you is that you are both correct. What I submit to you is that there are no exceptions, myself included, and that eternal vigilance is what is required to make sure that we stay in control of our own minds. Think back on what I just said and realize what that says about us as a culture. Eternal vigilance is required to make sure that we maintain control of our own minds. What then does that say about forces outside of ourselves that seek to control those minds and the thought processes thereof? Thought crime was not a thing that could be concealed forever. You might dodge successfully for a while, even for years, but sooner or later they were bound to get you. What better example of that than modern cancel culture? Of course, it helps with the modern cancel culture that they are able to change the rules on a sliding scale whenever they feel like it. Something that is acceptable political thought today is outright rejected tomorrow. You will stay in line with the orthodoxy, or you will become a thought criminal and therefore an enemy of the party. The Pew Research Center, Julia Haller. Information is only as reliable as the people who are receiving it. If readers do not change or improve their ability to seek out and identify reliable information sources, the information environment will not improve. Here we find ourselves in a chicken and egg equation. I submit to you that what she is offering is that our pliability, our mental malleability, the malleability of our very identities are our own fault because we haven't learned to think critically. And I will agree to a point. However, even the most vigilant, even the most intelligent, even the ones most diligent in their efforts can be fooled. And the better the technology gets and the better the methodologies and the techniques become, the harder it is to even know if you're in control of your own mind anymore. I hate to lowball it here and go with Samuel Clemens. It ain't what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. How many of us think that we have that measure of certainty? How many of us mistakenly believe things that are demonstrably, objectively, and provably false? And we don't even know that they're false because our perceptions have been squeezed into a box or a bubble. We remain trapped in mental prisons of our own making while thinking ourselves not only free, but enlightened, while pointing the finger at others and saying, look at how their minds have been twisted up, look at how their thought processes have been controlled, and forgetting the fact in our own arrogance that we are just as vulnerable. Not me, yes, you, Sparky. Every single one of us, including myself. So perhaps be a little bit more merciful on those loved ones. I'm not saying you have to maintain contact. I'm not even saying that's constructive to have people like that in your life. Certainly disengage if it has become negative to your own personal and intellectual growth. But try to be a little more forgiving, because there, before the grace of God, go you and I. God only helps those that help themselves. In this war for control of our own minds, we had better pull it together and learn to help ourselves. Learn to recognize the sinister machinations of those who wish to deceive and be able to implement countermeasures on the fly. Nothing less than our own identity rides on that. The opinions expressed by the Reverend are his own and no one else's on the planet. Not friends, not foes, not supporters, not detractors, not sponsors. And, since I start with a new one in just a matter of days, certainly not employers. They have been adjudicated thought crime in all jurisdictions. Consider yourself warned. They are coming from the heart. They are guided by the mind. And they are guaranteed to stretch open that maw, knock out any resistant teeth, and choke you, if necessary, to death, with or without consent, with a big, fat dose of throbbing truth cock. Welcome back, boys and girls. It's time once again for the Sunday sermon. I'm hoping I look over here and there's no sound problems, because I'm feeling pretty good about that opener. Let's see who's with me, man. Everybody in for the drum roll. Here we go. Yes, sir. Oh, man, I think all my usual suspects are here, and they are here early, man. Happy to be here. Looking forward to getting into all of this stuff with you. We're going to have some new viewers, both for the live version and for the replay. I want to thank all you guys for showing up. Good stuff going to be going on. Good stuff going to be going on with this, man. We're going to do a deep dive, brother. We're going to do a deep dive. Let me see, man. We're going to do a brief roll call. Brother Bill Wade is on board. Joel Allen Jackson from up in the frozen Midwest. The original sinner sister herself, Miss Emmy. Nice to see you, sweetheart. Thank you for that little scripture message that you sent me. Faith without works is dead, just like a body without spirit is dead. Profound stuff, man, and we could riff on that for a long time, but we're going to save that for another day. Brother Clem, the example of all that is right and good remaining among the French people. I will say that. You know, when I look at things I can really respect about France, I got Brother Clem and I got the Foreign Legion, and that's really about it. Although I will say, Clem, that your farmers have really, really stepped up. I wish we had time to do a deep dive on that today, and we'll be getting into that on another program. But I'm really, really proud, man. Europe is not dead. The West is not dead. That resistance is starting to kick, and, man, God bless you and your people for that, man. Good to see you. Glad you made it out, brother, and thank you for the text message you sent. I'm sorry I'm always absent when returning text messages, but that sentiment that you expressed and the offer that you made means the world to me, brother, and I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Brother Jude, checking in, y'all. Good to see so many folks on board. Yeah, it is, brother. And, of course, we have Roman and Carrie from opiumtales.com. Oh, look who decided to come out and join us. Hello, Miss Charlie. Nice of you to be here. Always nice to welcome your presence. I already warned you, some of this is going to make you bristle, but here we are. Deacon Mark, yes, sir, repping from the front porch. Hopefully you got either a good Russian vodka or a good whiskey and a cigar happening, and that lovely wife is there with you. Man, always good to see you guys showing up. Thank you so much for that. Who else have I? Who did I miss? Who did I miss? George Williams, man. Grandma always told me never sleep with the radio on under my pillows. In 1973, she said they would send thoughts. Brother, she was right. Doug, Brother Turtle, good to see you, man. Always a pleasure, man. And thank you again for everything, man. Our interaction means the world to me, brother. And boat drinks, brother. Boat drinks from the heart, man. God bless you, man. God bless you. Oh, who else we got? Wayne Sharp. Cool, man. Bro, you really got to get your brother, man. I miss him, but it's always good to see you, too. Wayne Sharp, back in my high school days in Tar Heel country. The mighty Bonsai Vongsa. Outstanding, brother. And look at this. Speaking of high school days, Wayne, do you see who showed up? Do you see who showed up? Andy McKinney, man, taking on out. That is awesome, bro. That is awesome. We got a lot, man. We got all the usual suspects. We got some new faces, and we got some really great material to cover. I am looking forward to getting into it, man. It's going to be awesome. She's standing up against globalism before just about anyone else has. Huge props. Indeed, man. And, standing up against globalism and, the sexist part of me, standing up against globalism and, by the way, nice rack. Right now, I just lost half of my female audience, and I don't care. I am on one today, man. We have double dipped on the caffeine. You guys know, Iron Infidel, man, my battle bottle. Man, this is probably the best piece of equipment I got in this whole thing. And I got weapons in here, man. But right now, this is the one that I'm leaning on. I managed to work a caffeinated beverage with supplemental caffeine into the damn thing, plus some amino acids, to keep this working. Good stuff, man. And clearly it's working. So here we are. One more little sip of liquid enthusiasm, and we're going to get into it, man. Go ahead and fade this bumper music out. You guys already know on the bumper music, man. And check them out on Spotify or any of the music platforms. The name of the band is Red Desert. Gut-stomping rock and roll band from the smoldering embers and ruins of the once great American city of Minneapolis, Minnesota. Name of the band is Red Desert. Name of the track is Older No Wiser. Every week I get a little bit older. You guys get to decide if I've gotten any wiser. Some weeks I do better than others. I think I may be on this week, but we'll see once we jump into the program. But definitely, man, download some of their music and buy some of their merch. They've been really cool. I threw this track out as bumper music back in the early days when we were still doing the COVID cast. You know what I mean? And they, I sent it to, I sent them a copy of one of the videos, and I was like, look, man, we've started this video podcast, and look, there's a lot of political stuff on here. There's a lot of stuff that's going to piss people off. If you would rather I not use your music, just let me know. And and they were like, no, man, cool. And so we want to give them a little boost, get their music out there. I really like it, man. I'm not going to be set tripping. Is it doom or is it desert or is it stoner, dude? I mean, like, what genre is it? Dude, shut up. Dude, it's rock and roll. Enjoy it. Go check them out, man. Name of the band is Red Desert. Want to give a couple of quick sponsor shout outs to get so we can really jump into this stuff today, man, because we got a lot to cover, and we're going, saddle up, guys. Put your pressure suits on, because we're going deep, man. We're going deep. Put on the hip waders, the pressure suits, and maybe even the hazmat for some of this stuff that we're going to get into. So, Emmy, it's almost like you know me, right? Someone might need to peel back, But to be fair, Emmy, you've seen me a hell of a lot more intense, so caffeinated. You see me a hell of a lot more. Anyway, so for Roman and his lovely wife Carrie over at opiumtales.com. Roman is one of my oldest and dearest friends. You guys know he just came out with a book, From Dork to Pimp Daddy. His journey as an artist, from being the campus nebbish and, occasional musician to being the guy that beautiful women pay for the privilege of him painting them naked. And he's done really well with that. They do some great watercolor work over there. They are the erotic pinups and portraits people. And coupled with that, on opiumtales.com, we have testosterone-driven commentary, and you guys know that I am all about that. On Planet Bart, it's a trifecta. Go check them out, man. Roman over at Opium Tales, and Roman Riva is the name that you look for his book on Amazon. It is available on Amazon Roman, if you want to post the contact information over there in the comments, just in case I missed anything, but Roman Riva from Dork to Pimp Daddy, check it out, man. And if you're learning how to draw, you're taking on a new hobby, a new craft, check it out. Roman has always been one of the more creative individuals that I've had the pleasure of crossing paths with. Are you going to need the lube too? Probably not, Tommy. Not this week, but I mean, keep some handy. I mean, I always keep some within arm's reach, particularly when I'm by the computer. You guys can do your own math on that. Anyway, that was a totally unnecessary little sidebar, wasn't it? That was just like, wow, Bart, just completely derailed, didn't you? Here we go. From Dork to Pimp Daddy, the most fun $10 you've ever spent. And yeah, man, it's $10. Guys, for those of you out there that are smokers, you blow that much on a pack of cigarettes these days, man. Do something that instead of corroding your lungs, it's actually feeding your brain. And help out my bro because he helps out the program. Also, one sponsor shout out for Casey and Dusty Tellison. Dusty, the pitmaster over at Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. Well, what about sit down, shut up, you're wrong. The only legit barbecue in the Inland Northwest. I'm going to keep you guys updated. They're going to be out with the long ship, the smoker trailer. And I saw some stuff. Check them out on social media, particularly on Facebook and Instagram. They were smoking some whole ribeye rolls, man. I'm talking like a strip of dead animal flesh, like as wide as my chest, and they were smoking these things whole, man, these big prime ribs. Oh my goodness, it looked absolutely magnificent. Made me regret the fact that I'm actually going to be leaving out of town tomorrow and going to be out for a little while but when I get back, man, I'm making a trip to Sonnenberg's, which is the local meat market. And then I'm heading out to Spangle, man, and we're going to throw some stuff on the smoker. But in the meantime, between time, check them out on social media. Nordic Smoke Barbecue, the only legit barbecue in the Northwest. And also, guys, let me just get over here for a second. If you can't get out to buy their food, which you would be very, very blessed if you could, they have their merch available here. This is a hoodie that Dusty brought by, and that's rolling with me on the road when I head out to this new crane gig. So check out their merch, check out their food, and support the guys. Take care of the people that take care of the program, because right now it's still kind of a labor of love, man. And I do want to give a shout out to all the people that, when I pass around that collection plate at the end. Look, I never get bent out of shape if you can't kick down anything, or you just don't feel like kicking down anything. I never get bent out of shape about that, because this is my therapy, right? It's much cheaper than actual therapy. But for you guys that do kick down consistently, man, I cannot thank you enough for your generosity. And I don't want to call you out and like put you out there on Front Street and things like that, but you know who you are, and I really, really appreciate everything that you guys do to keep this thing going. Again, it's a labor of love, man. I make really good money when I'm on the road as a crane operator. This is not a necessity. I appreciate the generosity, but I want everyone to understand it's not a necessity. My survival does not depend on that generosity. So if you're just having a bad week, or something's, or you wake up tomorrow and Biden is still freaking president, whatever it is, I'm not going to get upset. Okay. But for you guys that are kicking, thank you. Thank you so much for your generosity. Okay, guys. Normally this is where we would go into the Ryan's Rabbit Hole segment. Here's the thing. What I'm going to give you instead is a teaser, because there is a rabbit hole that we've been discussing back and forth. Ryan and I, when we get on our phone calls, man, we get, if you think I go off on a tear, man, the two of us together, it's like watching two boom hours. If you guys are, King of the Hill fans, it's like watching Boom Hour and his twin brother meth out of their skulls and ranting about politics. I mean, or just whatever crossed their mind. Anyway, here's the thing. We have a topic and trying to figure out how to approach it. But what I want you guys to research, this is going to be the rabbit hole I want you to go down. It's going to be sort of like a homework assignment, a research assignment feeding into the next sermon, because the next sermon, just like this one is dedicated entirely to doing a deep dive on propaganda stuff, the next one is going to be on this subject, and it is the nature of gender roles, how they affect the culture, and how they are affected by the culture and the perceptions thereof. I want you guys to look into the history of gender roles in the West, okay? I want you guys to study. So I want you guys to study some third generation feminism. I want you guys to look into it. Don't look into what, and again, propaganda, a lot of it's colored by the perception. We're going to get into that later. I want you guys to know what they're actually saying. One of the other things we're going to get into later is always be willing to look at the other side. So at the very least, you understand their arguments. When we get into the propaganda section, right, I am going to urge you to do something that is really going to grind your gears, man. You have to look at what the opposition believes. One of the greatest things that's ever happened to me, and you guys have heard this rant before, I know this is going to come as a tremendous shock to y'all, but when I was in high school, I was one of the top guys on the high school debate team. Wayne, if you're there, because Wayne, I think you were actually, Wayne, if memory serves, I think you were actually in study hall, or in a study hall that shared a room with the debate team with Miss Hall, if memory serves. But again, I've taken a lot of head trauma. Here's the thing. I did very, very well in debate, so much so that I intimidated the instructor, and she was on the opposite end of the political spectrum, and there was a big to-do, and it was nasty. But here's the thing. Here's what I learned. I was coming from a little Podunk County school, and my event was LD. That is to say Lincoln Douglas debate. The way that LD works is you have your resolution, and like one of the resolutions that I debated at States was the importance of was that covert operations must persist in Central America, some of the covert ops that were going on under Reagan. You have your resolution, and round by round, and you never know, you have to be able to debate both sides of that. Maybe in round number one, you're debating for continuing covert operations. The very next round, you have to argue against continuing covert operations, regardless of what your personal opinion may be on the subject. Now, I was a Reagan kid. I was all like, kill a commie for mommy, take them all out, whatever we got to do. But you have to, it was one of the best things that ever happened in my critical thinking process, because it forced me to get inside their head. I couldn't just go, these are people with stupid ideas. Some of that may be true, but I had to understand how they arrived at these stupid ideas. I had to get into their heads the same way a homicide investigator has to do with a murder suspect. You've got to get in their head, right? Same way an FBI criminal profiler has to do with a serial killer. You have to get inside their head. And sometimes it's not a pretty place to be. For serial killers, that's a very dark place to be. For criminals of other sorts, it's a dark place to be. For leftists, you have to dumb yourself down several degrees, but you've got to be able to get inside their head and understand the nature of their arguments. So for this sermon, and we're going to do the whole sermon, next one we do is going to be dedicated to this, is going to be perceptions and alterations, the way that gender roles in the West, and particularly in the United States, have evolved, the outside factors that have controlled that evolution, the way that it affects society now, and the way that it is affected by society now. And in the final analysis, the way that it has been weaponized as a cognitive warfare device against the West, or a fifth generation warfare device against the West. Cognitive warfare, fifth generation warfare, what are you talking about? I'm so glad you asked, because those are the bullet points that we're going to be going over later in the propaganda section. So again, the whole sermon, next sermon, is going to be devoted to this topic, because the more that I thought about it and the more my brain boiled up, it was like, I don't want to give, this is too deep. I can't just give this a 10-minute nod right? Like I didn't want to give it just like a little 10-15 minute nod and do the little sound of applause soundbite and everything and then just send you guys on your way. I wanted to give you a taste of what's coming next week so you guys can do your research. The same way a college professor would be like, hey, we're getting into this particular part of the Cold War, the crisis of the Suez Canal, and I want you guys to read these 3 chapters about the Suez Canal crisis and be ready to discuss that in our next lecture. Kind of like that. Okay. So you've got the subject. I want you to dive deep into 3rd generation feminism. I want you to dive deep into 5th generation warfare, which we're going to be covering later. But I want you to delve into how gender roles have evolved over the course of American history, right? And how gender roles have always existed and evolved throughout the West. What do you mean by the West? You know what I mean by the West. Mother Europe, man. Go in and look how those roles have evolved and look at what they've gotten to. Read some 3rd generation feminist stuff. Get inside their heads. Okay. Get inside their heads. Only for 3 weeks out of the month. That 4th week, you do not want to be in a 3rd generation feminist head. Just don't do it. Okay. But that's going to be your homework assignment. Wayne, first of all, Brother Thomas, always good. My mom would say, if you can't argue for something, you can't argue against it. Brilliant. I love your mom. She was a very wise woman, and clearly she gave birth to a very articulate, well-spoken and overspoken son with a tenacity for training methods and techniques, who is one hell of a husband and father. Tom, you inspire me, bro. You really do. Speaking of people that it's like watching a tennis match, any conversation. Normally I walk into a room and my conversation just dominates, right? Like, and it's not like I really have to try. It's just something that happens. Tom will take me right off that throne, dude. Like I'll sit at a Denny's with Tom and he will be dropping Japanese history and, all sorts of cultural references and just dropping wisdom on me, man. And it's rare. Charlie, you're going to like Tom because he's one of the few people that can get me to shut the hell up. Sometimes because he can't stop talking. He's got the same disorder that I do, but more often because, he'll take me into some deep water, man. He'll take me out of my depth the same way that Ryan does, when we get into the esoteric stuff. So anyway, I'm surrounded by some really great, really smart friends. That's what I'm coming to say. Wayne, that debate class was a hoot. I butted heads with Glenda Hall and managed to exit the class mid-year, transferring up to help the late Mr. Petrie and his new Apple Computer Lab. Wow, man, that takes me back because I remember Petrie now, man. I hadn't thought about that guy in probably 30 years. Yeah, okay, Charlie, I knew you had to chime in with that. Thank you. I haven't thought about Petrie in like 30 years, but I remember, man, we had the Apple IIe, and you remember when we got in the 2Cs, right? And we just thought, wow, it never gets any better than this. Let's play a game of Oregon Trail so we can all die of dysentery. Yeah. I thought, you get old, you start forgetting stuff, but I did remember you being in that class, at least for the first half of the year. And you got out at a good time because, the freshman year, it really wasn't that bad for me, but the sophomore year, it got ugly because I was really coming into my own. And my freshman year, it was real easy for her to shut me up and shut me down, with her, liberal drivel. And, look, I forgive the woman. You know what I mean? Miss Hall is what she is. And, I will say this for Glenda Hall. She did force me to open my mind a lot, regardless of how she handled that particular situation, which actually later required intervention of the local school board, by the way, because I don't back down from shit, and I never have. The efforts that she made to stifle my intellectual development along one line forced me into a box where I had to develop intellectually along another line. Not just the LD thing, but just being able to get inside someone else's head and figure out what makes them tick. So Tony Robbins is really big on this. If you're going to slag somebody, like, he slags his mom for all the horrible shit that he got put through, but that horrible shit shaped him and made him who he was. I don't hold a grudge against Glenda Hall for what she did, or any of that situation. It's decades in the past and I've grown way past it. But if I'm going to be angry with her about her actions in that moment, then I've got to give her credit for shaping who I would become. And I'm going to leave it there. My walk in the faith has shaped me, because I promise you, if you would have asked me that question even just a few years ago, my response would have been very, very different. But I'm thinking a little bit deeper level now. I really am. Okay, so you guys have your research assignment. You have your homework assignment. Go. And again, third generation feminism, right? Evolution of gender roles in the West. Okay. I want you to go as deep as you can take it. I want as deep as you can take it. I'm with, no ill will, and we all know what she had going on with Coach Foster, and that was an open secret with everybody involved. I may or may not have actually walked in on that occasion, which may or may not have had some bearing on her approach to me. Bygones, vaya con Dios. It's what happens when you're trying to do a podcast and you get to reminiscing with old high school friends. Wayne, I'm glad you're here, buddy. I really am. So, the bullet points as we were going to take them. Kafka and the American judiciary. Guys, I want you to be patient with me, because we're going to be doing a lot of visuals on this one. I've got a lot of these overlays. Let's talk about Franz Kafka. Kafka, again, right up there with Orwell as far as literary figures. Twisted little unit, Mr. Kafka. He was an influence on Dostoevsky, by the way. Super big influence on other literary figures like Dostoevsky. The darkness and the Byzantine nature of some of the scenarios that he created on a literary basis. Primarily what we're going to talk about with Franz Kafka. We're not going to get into like all of his works and his importance to, the evolution of literature, but we're going to go into one particular work that he had called The Trial. And we're not even going to get super deep on The Trial, okay? The Trial was a complex piece of work and really requires a deep dive. But the essence of it is the fact that a person is put on trial. He is not informed of the charges against him. Everything that he says to defend himself against accusations that are vague at best and nebulous and ephemeral. Nebulous and ephemeral, that's two of my college words. I got like 3 of those. Anyway. He's not really allowed to defend himself, and every defense that he offers up becomes further proof of his guilt. Kafka created a lot of nightmare scenarios in his work, in the one where he wakes up and he's a bug, you know what I mean? Imagine that, waking up and suddenly you're this insectivorous creature. Insectivorous, that's my third college word. The Trial is particularly dark because we have all been in positions where charges are made against us. They are vague. They are baseless. Most of us who are or have been of a criminal nature will own their shit. If you're in my circle and you're formerly of a criminal nature, you own your shit, because I won't tolerate that. I didn't do it. The man was against me kind of stuff. I don't have room for people like that. But I have room in my circle for people with criminal past, because guilty as charged. But you have to own your shit. Yes, I did that. Right. We've all been in positions where charges have been leveled against us that are baseless. We have all been in positions where, and sometimes it's just stupid stuff like the he said, she said on by the seashore on social media, right? Sometimes it gets a little more intense. I'm pondering whether or not to share this story. Yeah, I'm going to share it. I'm going to share it just for perspective. I'm going to give you the short. No. You know what? That's going to be for another day. In fact, I think that'll dovetail best on next week's. It's frightening to find yourself in a position where, because there's no actual evidence to support the charges against you, there's nothing to defend yourself against, and yet the conviction and belief of someone will continue to carry the day, and anything that you say becomes evidence to further incriminate you. In fact, there's a whole term now, and it's called the Kafka trap, Kafka trapping. It's a rhetorical device to where any denial of a charge that is made against an accused person, anything the accused says to deny a charge, becomes evidence of their guilt. You know, you're a Nazi. I am not a Nazi. Well, that's exactly what a Nazi would say, right? I will say this, and I'm gonna be hitting both teams today politically, but Kafka traps are almost exclusively the province of leftists. That's almost, I am not a picket. Anything ending in phobe or ist, you're a transphobe. I am not. Yeah, well, that's exactly what a transphobe would say. Transphobe. Okay. You can even try to offer physical evidence, tangible evidence in defense. I am not a transphobe, as evidenced by the fact that, whatever. I have been involved in relationships with trans women. Therefore, I am not a transphobe. Oh, yeah, what a great defense, man. Just trying to offer that up. Like, that's an out. Like, I have a black friend, so I can't be racist. Yeah, it's just what... That's a Kafka trap, okay? They are going in with the premise established that they are correct, infallibly correct, not open to anything outside the accusations that are being made. The bullet point was Kafka and the American judiciary. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because the propaganda part of the program is going to be way more important. But this was so overwhelming that I felt like I had to address it. We remember this ex-president and that woman to the right. That is Juanita Broderick. She lodged a credible accusation of rape, not sexual assault, not sexual misbehavior, not sexual misconduct, rape against William Jefferson Clinton, with physical evidence, with relevant details, with primary and secondary eyewitnesses, with testimony from other people who were involved with the incident. She was shot down in flames by the mainstream media, ostracized, dehumanized, demoralized. So it was too with William Jefferson Clinton and this young lady by the name of Paula Jones. They were classified as, Broderick and Jones and every one of his dozen or so accusers were dismissed as white trash, hick women, gold diggers, etc., etc., etc. The polarization element was really, really interesting because I can remember, and you guys can go back and look this up, I'm not making this up, not one, but several female journalists, when it came out later that Monica Lewinsky, who had made the accusation that they carried on a consensual sexual relationship, and he called her a gold digger and a liar and all these other things too, and she came with actual physical evidence and DNA evidence. Women journalists, women, me too, believe all women, hashtag. Women journalists were like, well, okay, maybe it's true, but and I'm quoting here, I would perform oral sex on Bill Clinton just for his protection of abortion rights. That's a quote. You can find that from a female journalist. Okay. So fast forward, that young lady on the right, that is Tara Reid. She made credible accusations, including specific details, including evidence against that cadaver on the left before he became cadaverous. He pushed himself up on her, got her jammed up in a corner, and shoved several fingers into an unwilling orifice of hers. She was dismissed from her position when she went public with it. She carried that secret around for a long time. And what did they? And again, quotes from women, including at least one of the members of the squad. Okay. When she came forward with those accusations and Biden was running for president, at least one member of the squad, because she confronted them. Well, what about believe all women? What about believe all women? And at least one member of the squad responded with, I believe you. I'm not making this up. You can find it. I believe you, but I believe you and I'm sorry. But right now, it's more important that Biden be elected. In other words, really sorry for getting 3 fingers jammed up your snatch by a presidential candidate, but this candidate is the one that we really need to win right now. So, sorry for you. And then we have this. Not only was she not called out on obvious falsehoods and obvious lunacy, but she was heralded as a messianic figure in their quest to end the political career of Darth Cheeto, the Mango Menace, he who must not be named. Now, this is E. Jean Carroll. And again, I'm not gonna really get into this. But when it comes down to Kafka traps, this is where it becomes important. Her first allegations, okay, she threw it out, not as I'm going to try to get something, but she threw out in a magazine article about people that she regretted crossing paths with. And it was Donald Trump and a high-ranking, I think, ex-CEO of CBS. I can't remember his name. Neither can you, because until I just said that, you didn't even know that he had also been accused by this woman. Oddly enough, he wasn't sued. She mentioned it in passing in an article for, I believe, Esquire, right? And it was just kind of one of those jabs. It's like, this guy's an asshole, and he touched me up, and he did me wrong, and I'm just going to take my little poke at him, right? And it was pretty well dismissed. Nobody thought too much of it. It's easy enough to believe. Let me be abundantly clear at the outset, because a couple of you out there are starting to bristle. It is entirely possible that everything she says is correct. It is entirely possible. I don't happen to believe it, but it is entirely possible that everything she says is 100% accurate. The scary part is the Kafka part. She lodged the accusation. That accusation went, and Trump obviously denied it. You know, because if you come at me and you call me a rapist and I didn't rape you, I'm going to say, I never raped that woman. I don't know what the hell she's talking about. Some of you guys who are watching this program have been victims of those accusations. You know what that feels like. Tell me that wasn't Kafka-esque. I didn't do that. Oh, yeah. Because rape is one of those accusations, like child molestation, like, pedophilia, any of those things that the accusation will stick in a person's head. It's actually a propaganda technique, and we're going into that later. This is going to dovetail into that. The nature of the Kafka trap is this. He denied the accusations, as one would, whether he did it or not. There were never criminal charges filed, ever. No evidence was ever presented. No eyewitnesses were ever presented. And yet, she was given political clout by New York City Democratic politicians because they saw it as a way to get the orange man. They literally changed a law to make it possible. She had never even thought about filing criminal charges. She is on video with Anderson Cooper saying it wasn't rape. He didn't throw me down and ravage me. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to file charges. Someone prodded her to file charges and changed a law in New York State. removing the statute of limitations for rape, but only for this 1 month period. 2 months, maybe? Fact check me on that. We're going to remove the statute of limitations on rape, but only for this 2 month period. So all you women who have got some dark secrets, bring them all out now. Now's the time. We got a 2 month window. We're going to do away with the statute of limitations. It had already been over a decade. They changed the law. She filed charges. Once again, Trump said, I didn't rape this woman. He went before a jury, and much is made of the jury trial. Well, he was tried by a jury and he was found guilty. No, what the jury found, and again, baffling because, again, no eyewitnesses, no physical evidence, and she literally could not remember the year that it happened. Now, she remembered several relevant details, including it happening at a Bergdorf's in a dressing room and a particular piece of lingerie that he had talked her into putting on, which oddly enough was the plot of an SVU episode that aired roughly the same time, but we'll leave that to the side because I'm not going to impugn her character like that. What I'm going to offer you is the facts. She couldn't remember the year that it happened. There was no physical evidence, no eyewitnesses. It went to trial, and the jury, I guess because #BelieveAllWomen said, okay, he didn't rape her, but he probably sexually touched her, right? The judge said, screw the jury, and he said he raped her. You can look this up, by the way. All of this is documented. Judge overrules the jury and says he raped her, awards her $5 million. Well, obviously, this is a miscarriage of justice. Obviously, this is going to be appealed. And as he's going through the appeal process, another reporter said, Mr. Trump, now that you've been found guilty of rape, what do you expect the man to say? I didn't rape that woman. This is a political operation. I didn't rape that woman. Here's the Kafka part. That $83 million that this lunatic just got awarded this past week. She was awarded the $83 million based on defamation of her character, and the defamation in question was him denying the charges. It really is just as simple as that. Now, did he do it? Didn't he do it? We'll never know. It's going to be really hard to figure because it happened sometime back around 94, 95, maybe 96. She can't remember. And there was no physical evidence and no eyewitnesses and no nothing. But that's why the statute of limitations exists. So the law was bent to allow what is obviously a political hit job. The jury made a decision based on the emotions of the political moment. #BelieveAllWomen said, well, we can't prove that he did it, but he probably did. We have no physical evidence, no eyewitness, but he probably did. Based on what? The judge got involved and said, no, he raped her. And then for him saying, I didn't rape her. I didn't rape her then for the $5 million. I didn't rape her now for the $83.5 million. I didn't do it. You're defaming her character by denying the charges, Mr. Trump. I don't care how you feel about the guy. You can hate his guts, and there's at least a dozen good reasons to hate his guts. If you're of that bent, there's 100 good reasons. But when you start going down that Kafka trail for the intent of impugning one particular man and knocking a political opponent out of business, or for any reason, what Pandora's box have you opened? Ponder that. Particularly you guys that have a dangling appendage, all of you out there that have a dangling appendage, I want you to ponder that. Someone accuses you of rape, you say, I didn't rape her. That is not only the Kafka trap proof that you did rape her, but if you continue to defend yourself against the charges, you are guilty of defaming her character because you denied the charges. That's terrifying. But that's where we've arrived. Two last things that I will say about E. Jean Carroll, because I did use some disparaging words calling her a lunatic. There are two interviews that I want you to look up. Again, why don't you believe her? Why don't you believe her? You believe Tara Reid? Yeah, I do believe Tara Reid. I do. Okay. Her accusations come off as credible. But even with Tara Reid, it's past the statute of limitations. She's got no actual physical evidence. Therefore, it can't be brought to trial. That is regrettable, deeply regrettable, because I do believe the woman. But those safeguards in our judicial system exist for a reason. So she's going to try her case in the court of public opinion, and with the entire propaganda ministry saying that she is an enemy of the state. That is very unfortunate for Tara Reid. E. Jean Carroll, on the other hand, I want you to look up two videos right now on YouTube. First search term is going to be E. Jean Carroll, Anderson Cooper, rape is sexy. Look that up. She literally says, because Anderson is trying to steer her in the direction of slagging on Trump. And she was like, oh, it wasn't rape. I didn't want to get, rape has all these connotations. And Cooper is like, well, yes, it's violence. And she was like, no, most people think rape is sexy. Cooper knows he's out of his depth and immediately starts like back. Okay, well, we should probably cut to commercial. And she leans in after this awkward moment, leans in there. You're a really interesting person to talk to. They cut immediately to commercial. After the $83.5 million judgment, I want you to go to YouTube and I want you to look up E. Jean Carroll, Rachel Maddow, because she appeared on that Maddow guy show. Did she look pensive? Did she look happy? Because she had said that she was going to make sure that $83.5 million went to do something for women's rights. She is yucking it up on the Rachel Maddow program, talking about the first thing that's going to happen. Rachel, me and you are going shopping and we're getting all new wardrobes and I'll buy you a penthouse in France. And go look. Watch the damn video. And her attorneys are on either side of her looking profoundly uncomfortable, just like this. And she finally gets to the end of that rambling. Whatever you want, Rachel, I'll buy that for you. We're going to get new shoes and I'm going to get fur coats for you. And we're going to get a new fishing rod for my attorney here. We're going to get a new boat for my attorney here. And one of the attorneys finally pops up and goes, that's a joke. Oh yeah, a joke. I get it. This is terrifying, absolutely terrifying, but it feeds into the propaganda because, and this is the first of the bullet point that I'm going to deal with, first of the bullet points that I'm going to deal with regard to the propaganda, framing. When you have people who are in charge of the stimulus, they are in charge of the response. You control the stimulus, you control the response. Oldest rule in the book. It's very, very easy to control a human mind. It's very, very easy to control dozens of human minds at once if you frame something in the right way. Because are we hearing any of these relevant details? Like the fact that there was no physical evidence, she can't remember the year that it happened, any of this stuff, or seeing those interviews where she outs herself as a freaking lunatic. Do we see any of that? No, we do not. And that's how you frame it. You keep repeating one particular thing over and over and over again. He was found guilty of rape by a jury. No, he was not. Well, a judge said that he was guilty of rape. Yes, over the objections of the jury. Yeah, but they charged him and he has to pay $83.5 million. Do you know they haven't even started the appeals process yet? Do you know how badly these horrible decisions are going to be overturned on appeal? You can feel about that however you want to, but these safeguards legally are there for a reason. You start saying, yeah, but I'm on the right side of history. My heart is in the right place, so it's okay for me to do this. We got problems, man. We got problems. But framing is an important part of propaganda, and we will get into that. But Kafka and the American judiciary, the more you dig about Kafka, the more you dig in about Kafka, and the more you realize yourself realize the nature of the Kafka trap as a rhetorical device, you will realize that this is the most important, most effective propaganda tool that they have, and they have used it to great effect. Propaganda, let's just talk about it. You know what? Just for the sake of, because words mean things, I am going to look up the actual Webster's definition of propaganda. Yeah, we're going to do that live. Just so we can all be on the same page. Propaganda, information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Okay? Propaganda. Information, you guys look that up, information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote or publicize a particular political cause or point of view. Let me see if I can actually pull that down. No, I can't pull that down. All right, fine. Propaganda is misleading, literally by definition. Biased, literally by definition. Everyone has an agenda. You have heard me say this before on the sermon again and again and again and again. Everyone is subjective. Everyone has an agenda, myself included. I tend to wear my biases on my sleeve. So there's very little subterfuge there. When I am speaking from a subjective position, you bloody well know it. I will tell you, this is how I feel about something. I will give you an objective analysis of the facts as best I am able, but literally no one is 100% objective. No one. So we have to ask ourselves, who is controlling the narrative? Who is controlling the thoughts? Because again, if you control the stimulus, you control the response. Now, we can be as vigilant as we want. And I would like to think that most of you guys out there in my audience are very, very intelligent people. Some more so than others, but generally intelligent people. But we are all vulnerable. I have been tricked. I have been swayed. I have been cowed and intimidated on a number of things. Let's start with my faith, okay? Just want to touch on this really briefly, and then we'll get into the meat of the propaganda thing. Just in terms of my faith, and you know, my secular friends, you can tune me out right now. It had been speaking to me for at least 3 years. And yet, even though nobody was forcing me, because, and it wasn't the sole thing that kept me from acknowledging it and responding to it, but the fact of how it would be perceived by others, right? That at least on some level was weighing in my head. It certainly wasn't the primary concern, but on some level, it was definitely weighing on me. It was. Because we're all, I don't give a damn what anybody thinks. Well, 90%. At some point, yeah, what other people think will color your judgment, subconsciously or otherwise. Ministers of propaganda, and when I say ministers of propaganda, I mean people who use that as a directed part of their aim, will use that fact against you. They understand that, and again, my audience is less susceptible to that than others, I would like to believe, with notable exceptions. But the average person is so controlled by how they are perceived. Look at the way people go out of their way to paint their life as being something better than it is just on social media. The younger generations are entirely controlled by the flow of likes, follows, entirely controlled by it. Number of likes on a post doesn't hit a certain thing, they go into clinical depression. That is a, to coin my favorite Neil Peart lyric, the knowledge that they fear is a weapon to be used against them. I'm going to throw out some visual examples of propaganda and the way that it works. War propaganda is always the best. Here we have, and we're going to do a little bit deeper dive on all the techniques involved here as we get into it. But I just wanted to throw out some visual examples right off the top. Destroy this mad brute, enlist, wearing the Kaiser helmet, right? This was back from World War One. The German, the Hun. You've got dehumanization. You've got appeal to groupthink. You've got appeal to do your part. Good versus evil, dehumanization of enemy. Yeah, plenty of stuff going on just in this one little frame. But remember, and this is something else, subliminal advertising. Okay, that's a propaganda technique. And in fact, let me punch that up because that was one of the things that I had intended to get into. Subliminal advertising was once called a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, right? We're all familiar with that. Oh yeah, man, they're putting secret messages in the ads and movies and it's appeal to your subconscious. Here's the thing. That was a legit thing, has been, continues to be. Airbrushing tits and skulls into ice cubes and liquor ads back before Photoshop, where you had to airbrush it in. All this stuff. Advertising firms paid psychologists, clinical psychologists, millions of dollars a year, every year, to find out the best way to do what? To get inside your head and to take the steering wheel away from you. They knew that the average person looks at an ad for 3 seconds or less. Even assuming, let's highball it and say 10 seconds. This is for advertising, but it works across all propaganda. Propaganda is designed to appeal to the subconscious, okay? The conscious mind processes. Most people looking at an image don't stay on it longer than 3 to 10 seconds. The conscious mind doesn't have time to completely process in 3 to 10 seconds. So what are they reaching into? They're reaching into the subconscious. And they know, because psychology is an ever-evolving science, they know, first of all, the two stimulus that the subconscious responds most strongly to, sex and death. Beginning of life, the ending of life, the birth-death cycle. Our subconscious responds to that. Flash picture of a titty. Whoa, you got my attention for about 3 seconds. But if under the picture of the titty, airbrushed into it is, vote Republican. I mean, I'm dumbing it down, but you get the picture, as it were. So in that single frame, I'm gonna put these up for about 5 seconds, 5 to 10 seconds apiece. I want you to just look at the images and think about what it makes you feel. Doesn't matter your political side, doesn't matter your affiliation, doesn't matter your race, doesn't matter your religion. I'm just going to flash these and I'm going to say, okay, how does it make you feel? All right, let's go on to the next one. You guys ready? Okay, here we go. And flash. There's 5 seconds. What do you think about that particular image? Appeals to it. We are America, land of the free, home of the brave. We're not like them over there with their controlled press. which is why a high-placed technological operative now resides in Russia, because he had to. Edward Snowden now lives in over there, because he was looking for a controlled press rather than a free press to plead his case. So you had the 5 seconds. Let's go in and let's do a little bit deeper dive. Over here, our free press. We are getting objective news. Over there, controlled press. It's all propaganda. We don't do propaganda. We get objective information. You guys have heard me say this before. That one survivor of the Soviet era that said the one good thing about living under Soviet communism was that we knew everything that came from the radio, everything that came from the television, everything that came from the newspaper was propaganda for the power structure. We knew that, and we learned to read between the lines and said, this is what they say, this is what they mean. Americans, on the other hand, think that, boy, that Walter Cronkite guy, he sure just gives us the, and that's the way it is. Tuesday, December 7th, whatever. They think they're getting objective information. And this applies to everyone across the board, even when it was just the three major networks: ABC, CBS, NBC. Mike Wallace, Dan Rather, Walter Cronkite, any of the people, Charles Kuralt on Sunday mornings. I'm dating myself there. Even then, we thought there was the semblance that we were getting objective information. We knew they leaned left, but they tried to play it like close to the middle, right? When the fact of the matter is, every single one of those outlets was controlled by corporations, controlled by their advertisers. In my academic career, my illustrious academic career, consisting of one semester at a community college, basically the only two things that came out of that were, one, my friendship with Roman, and two, a professor who I will never forget, a fellow by the name of John Ballione, Introduction to Journalism. And I went in with my head full of all sorts of lofty thoughts about, well, what is the importance? Why does the free press exist? Why does the media exist? And well, they are the bastion of honesty against the lies handed down by the power structure. They preserve the people's access to information. And he cut my legs right out from under me. He was like, no, they exist to make a profit. Journalism exists to be signal through the noise. Journalism exists to be light through the darkness. The media exists to make money. What's happening to all the big, oh no, we're here for the truth. We're here for the ideology. Really? Then how come you're laying off thousands of people right now across the mainstream media sphere? The narrative is falling apart. People don't trust them anymore because they shouldn't. Sports Illustrated, Newsweek, New York Times, all these major legacy media companies can no longer sustain it because they're not making money. Why are they not making money? Because people don't want to advertise on their platform anymore. Why don't they want to advertise? Because no one believes them. Would you want to sink advertising money into Rachel Maddow's show right now? That Maddow guy? Would you want to sink advertising into his show right now? Rachel Maddow, the chick. Shut up. I know what I'm saying. No, because the ratings are in the shitter. However, if you found out that there was a way that you could advertise on Tucker Carlson's show, on Twitter, X, whatever, we love you, Elon, you would be falling all over yourself to put money behind that show. Why? Because he's got the viewership. Do you realize that Tim Pool, you guys ever heard of Tim Pool? I used to listen to the Timcast pretty frequently. He's a cool guy, silly beanie hat or whatever, but he has done very, very well for himself. His viewership easily quadruples anything that any major media outlet does on their best night. He can be having a slow day and still beat CNN and Fox combined in terms of total viewership. Where do you want to put your advertising money? Specifically when Tim Pool has a better track record of telling you the truth. Tucker Carlson has a better track record of telling you the truth. You can feel about that however you want. You can say that his laugh is creepy as hell, and it is. You can say that I really wish he'd stop wearing sweaters, which I really do wish. But the fact of the matter is, he's gotten it right across the board. From COVID to the political spectrum to everything, to foreign policy, to Ukraine. He's gotten it right. All these other people have gotten it wrong. Does an advertiser want to keep sinking money? I'm getting off topic. Let's flash another one. How about, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What's that? Well, it's fisting porn. No. God, who would think something like that? No. How did it make you feel? If you were a woman, how did it make you feel? It made you feel empowered, didn't it? If you were an American, right, and that was appearing to you in English, you start thinking, yeah, man, you feel motivated, you feel strong, you feel empowered. This is Rosie the Riveter. This was a propaganda effort by the War Department during World War II because the women were having to go to work in the factories because the men were overseas fighting the war. This was empowerment for women, and the course of the sexual dynamic and the course of gender roles in America would never be the same. You guys remember your homework assignment? Good. Designed to make them feel empowered. Designed to make them feel that they are an essential part of the war effort. Let's go to the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How did that make you feel? We're all in this together. We got to go defeat the Hun. We're all part of the war effort. We got guys on the front lines that are counting on us. Yeah, well, that's a pretty accurate assessment for 5 seconds. Look at all the welders in the back. They're working on building tanks and guns and planes and all those good things while this gentleman is out on the front lines. And what do we notice about that? What can we tell? What era is this? Just judging from me, just take a look. What era is this? What war is that? It's World War II. He's got an M1 Garand with a bayonet. This was American war propaganda during World War II, and it carried to great effect. Let's all fight! We're right there on the front lines. Wow, man. What a positive use of a nation to try to rally their troops. I mean, not at all like this. We are fighting. You must also work for victory. I couldn't find that one. I looked everywhere for it. This was Nazi war propaganda right here. Everybody behind it, everybody in the war effort. This is the way that regimes, totalitarian or otherwise, and you have to decide for yourself whether a regime is totalitarian, whether they are benevolent, whether they are malevolent. It doesn't matter. Propaganda works the same. This was a German effort to rally people behind the war effort. They have been, and when it comes to propaganda, totalitarian regimes have no peer. You will know when a culture has become totalitarian by their propaganda. Ye shall know them. Here's some more German stuff right here. I'll give you about 5 seconds to process that. I want you to imagine that you are a young college student or someone fresh out of high school in Germany right now. What would that make you feel? That would make you feel that even though you're young, you've got an important duty to the fatherland and you have to stand alongside. Do you see how this works? You're looking at it for 5 seconds. It's not appealing to anything because you're thinking about it. It's like, well, how do I really feel about this war? How do we get involved in this war? And do I trust the leadership? And the secret police took away 2 families on my street last week, and I don't know how to feel about that. Are you processing any of that? No, sir. They're reaching right back into your subconscious. And you know what? I may just be a college student, but I've got to do my part for the fatherland. The intellectual effort needs me. Maybe I can't be on the front lines with the SS division committing war atrocities, but I can be here, standing for the fatherland in my own little way. And then, of course, some other, you know what? I'm going to throw this one out. It's probably going to get me booted off of YouTube for a couple of weeks, but I'm going to throw it out. Speaking of German war propaganda, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. You had 5 seconds to look at that, reaching right back into your subconscious. Can you think of a particular ethnicity? Anything that brings to mind? Maybe some stereotypes that you might have seen before? And after looking at that picture, how do you feel about them in particular? So we had our 5 seconds. I haven't even checked the comments over here, and I really need to get over here. Oh, thank you. Hey, James, I'm glad you made it out. Propaganda wins the populace. Populace keeps the status quo. Absolutely. Those people are killing us. Okay, right on. What do you got? If you can't fight, send money, right? Yeah. Joel, I knew you were still going to see lesbo fisting. Long Nose Pete. Hey, man, I'm glad you made it out. Look, this is why I say don't worry about it. Don't worry about being punctual. You get here at any point, man. We're going to be dropping bombs, bro. We're going to be dropping bombs, ideologically speaking, of course. Yeah, Tim. Okay, so you do listen to Tim Pool. Fear is the first reaction, easiest to activate. Right. If I convince you it's a major storm, you'll watch the weather. If I watch, I can sell ads. Yes. Another technique of propaganda. This is why I know that most of my audience gets it. We're going to do a little bit deeper dive. Right, Tom? Sex, food, and death. Sex, food, and death. Oddly enough, speaking of gender roles and the way that those are manipulated against us, what are the 3 things? 2 out of those 3 things happen to be the only 2 things every male of every species will fight. There are only 2 things that every male and every species will fight to the death over, and that is food and the toy box. That's right. Food and sex. The right to eat and the right to mate. They will fight to the death over that. Getting back to it. Let me get back. Where was I? Yes. Okay. So let's take another little look at that. Obviously, that is German wartime propaganda. The Star of David in the background, the long nose. You know who they're aiming this at. They're aiming it at the Jews. I cannot read the bottom because I fooled you. It's not in German, is it? Oh, here's the trick of propaganda. Because if you see this image, you think it's anti-Jewish and therefore must be the product of the Third Reich or some rabidly anti-Semitic, white supremacist, right-wing organ. Look down there at the bottom. Anybody here that can read Cyrillic? Sonny, are you there? Sonny, Alexei, are you there? Because I would really love to have a translation for that, because I've got the sneaking suspicion. I can't, somebody fact check me on this, but I've got the sneaking suspicion that that did not come out of Russia. It came out of Ukraine. Why? Because Ukraine, those good guys, they large contingencies of Ukrainians aligned themselves with the Nazis against the Russians during World War II. So you see how this propaganda thing plays tricks across all things. Some of y'all got tripped up. Some of y'all got so focused. Again, because what are they appealing to? They're appealing to the subconscious. The subconscious works on the tyranny of everybody knows. Everybody knows that Nazis and hardcore right-wing Republicans are anti-Semitic. So we're doing something like this. It must have been from Nazi Germany. Really? Then why is it Cyrillic alphabet at the bottom? Because last I heard, Germans didn't use the Cyrillic alphabet. But y'all didn't even see that down at the bottom, particularly during the 5-minute or during the 5-second look. Y'all didn't even see that. You didn't notice. It was a detail that got past you. Why? Because we're not dealing with a conscious mind that is processing things. We are dealing with the subconscious, and that is the sinister nature of propaganda. When I get into your mind might not actually be your own, I am not exaggerating. It is not hyperbole. Okay, let's try some more from the Soviet era since we're here. How about this one? This is a classic. And by the way, I collect this stuff. One of the things that I love about Jordan Peterson is he also has a substantial collection of propaganda from totalitarian regimes, the Nazis, the communists. And people think to themselves, why would you collect memorabilia from that? Are you some kind of Nazi? Are you some kind of hardcore communist? No. I'm merely fascinated with the power of an image to take control of your brain. Now, here we clearly see that this is coming out of the Soviet era. We clearly see the Cyrillic alphabet because there is a style to this. What do you also see? You see the hammer, you see the sickle. Now, when you look at this, you think, yes, the empowerment of the worker. And by the way, the caption is, smite the lazy worker. I don't know that because I can read Cyrillic. I know that because one of my kettlebell students did a t-shirt for our gym based on that. Smite the lazy workout. Yes. And because we use sledgehammers. And so he did a take on this exact thing, only it was a sledgehammer and the guy in the back had ropes and the guy in the middle, no, the guy in the middle had the hammer. The guy in the back had battle ropes and the guy up front was swinging a kettlebell. So anyway, that one really speaks to me. I collect this stuff. Why? Because again, this is my wheelhouse. How people manipulate the human mind. It's my jam, bro. It's my jam. It's my professional sports. And the further I distance myself from politics going into the season, the more that I get into the actual nature of what's behind those politics. And a lot of that is propaganda and mind control. Here are some more classics. Here's 3 classics from the Soviet era. Right here, right? Again, empowerment of the worker, the guy on the left, what are you doing for the war effort? The empowerment of the proletariat in the middle. One of my favorites over on the right, where he is refusing, what is he refusing? He's refusing vodka. A Russian refusing vodka? My goodness, that's a war crime. Well, maybe once upon a time, and I don't know, maybe there's a couple of Russians out there that might still feel that way because they haven't gotten their bottle of Beluga yet. Yeah, that was, it was a propaganda campaign designed to keep people from drinking. But what did you see there? Again, bring it all in. We're doing it for the greater good. We're doing it for the higher cause. We're doing it for the motherland. Authoritarian regimes. Here we go. Chairman Mao. And we're all in this together. Look at the pictures right there. I'll give you 5 seconds. I'll give you 5 seconds. I'll give you 5 seconds. And how did that make you feel? If you were a citizen of China and you were trying to decide between the nationalists under Chiang Kai-shek or the red revolution, excuse me, of Mao Zedong, How do you feel right here? Here's a technique you're going to see a lot. Great leader. The great leader. This persists to this day, by the way, with Kim Jong-un, Kim Jong-il. All of the Korean leaders use the same great leader thing that the Chinese used under Mao. And look at all the people on the bottom from all walks of life: factory workers, soldiers, farmers, women in factory roles, and we're all standing together for great leader who is put on. Look at that. Is he? Oh my goodness, he's on the clouds, almost like a messianic figure. And just a matter of seconds, you seize their brain. And then they're going to go on to whatever they were doing to their, with all the people that were pictured there. We're going to go work on the farm. We're going to go work in the factory. We're going to go home and take care of the kids. But just in passing, boom, and you planted that seed. And that is the power of propaganda. We're inside your head now. A little worm. Some more stuff. Little red guard. Yes, all these powerful images. What do you feel right there? 3, 2, 1. You are a Chinese worker. How do you feel about that? I'm really important to this thing. I'm important not just to myself, but to the nation. That's another appeal to propaganda. Something greater than myself. And a couple of you out there are thinking, yeah, kind of how religion works, isn't it? Yeah, it is. That's a different argument. That's why I'm not gravitating to religion. That's why I walk with the carpenter and not the church. Okay. Let me just diffuse that. I didn't want to get too far out there. But yes. Religious organizations, from cults to churches. What is the difference between a church and a cult? Cult has no political power. Old joke, but still very telling. Some of these techniques work exactly the same. We're talking about wresting the controls of your thought process away from you and taking it into people who want to push you to their ends. But if you are a Chinese worker and you see this, man, you feel like you are very important. You're important to the revolution. You're important to the nation. You're important to the proud legacy of Chinese culture dating back millennia. And you are powerful, swinging your hammer for the effort of the Red Revolution, the great leap forward. That's how you're feeling. And it worked. I'm going to take you through a couple more right here. You're really going to enjoy these, right? Here's another one from the Soviet era right here, the hammer and the sickle. Leading a powerful army of workers. If you're a Soviet worker, how did that make you feel in 5 seconds? Empowered, part of something greater than yourselves, moving on proudly at the vanguard of moving forward and advancing our nation and our culture and our civilization. What else does a culture and nation need to be for that to be really effective? It's got to be homogenous for that type of propaganda to work. One nation, one people. Oh, try this. Ein Reich, ein Blut, ein Führer. One Reich, one blood, ein Volk, one people, one Führer. When you are culturally and or racially homogenous, far easier to push with that kind of propaganda. Then there's other kinds of propaganda that work better in multicultural societies. Oh, we've all seen this one on the t-shirt of every damn college kid. Makes me sick to my stomach. Who is that, boys and girls? Who is that? Oh, yeah, he looks like a good man, right? Slaves. Credit to the artist. That's a dang good picture of Mao. Isn't it, though? Isn't it? If you don't study the enemy, you aren't a student of the game. Collect away. Yes, sir. Subconsciously start imaginary cognitive reads. Pictures carry more subconscious weight. And by the way, guys, I'm sorry. I'm having to work the visuals thing from my production screen, but I love that you still got this lively dialogue over here in the chat box, man. I really, really like that y'all are carrying on the conversation, because I know that y'all get it. I know that you guys are tracking here. I know that you're tracking. The carpenter would turn over a few tables in a lot of places claiming to be churches. Brother, you are absolutely right on that front. Absolutely right on that front. Check the post that I made on the Reverend Bart page about how a man possessed by thousands of demons can recognize Christ, but wise men possessed of thousands of scriptures did not notice. Very true. Anyway, speaking of ideological conflicts, that's Che Guevara. If you ever see that t-shirt on, and here's where I get booted from YouTube again for advocating violence. If you ever see a Che Guevara shirt on the body of an LGBTQ activist, Sock them in the freaking mouth. Che Guevara was a child killer. Che Guevara was a rapist. Che Guevara was, by the definition, homophobe. I hate even using those words because of the weight that they carry. But he had gay people killed. He thought that gay people and black people were enemies of the revolution, and he himself was a creature of privilege, coming from a wealthy family. Wow, sounds like a lot of those college kids that are wearing the damn Che shirts. So I understand why you see this maggot as a role model. But that's the power of propaganda, isn't it? It's how they feel. They appeal to the subconscious. Well, I'm part of the resistance. I'm part of the revolution. I'm anti-establishment. Yeah, bro, Che is literally me. Do another bong rip, maggot. But they've gotten into the subconscious. And because of people's historical ignorance, it works. It works. Because they don't understand the kind of man that he was. But again, it falls back on great leader, too. Great leader of the resistance. A face that is messianic. One that we are supposed to idolize. One that brings us a new day and a new dream of hope. That one looked vaguely familiar. Do you think it is an accident that they copied communist propaganda methods for that? Do you think that was done by accident? These people are disciples, right? These people are disciples of Rules for Radicals, Saul Alinsky, that group. It's no accident. They put that out for two reasons. One, because they know that it works. It's an old, tried, and tested propaganda method. They know that it bypasses your conscious processing and goes directly to your subconscious mind. And you know what else they know? They know that the average American is too ignorant to realize the artistic influence that communist propaganda art had on democratic propaganda. Two things that they count on. Another example, same basic thing. Oh, but look at the choice of color scheme. Look at the choice of color scheme. Wow. They're not even making any secret of it, are they? Now, here's the thing. Those propaganda methods, they work. They appeal directly to the subconscious mind. They catch your attention and they stay long after the image is gone. Again, if I came up and flashed any one of these images just for a couple of seconds, that one right there, boom, it's there and it's gone. But the seed that it planted remains. And here is how those basic propaganda techniques have affected modern culture and modern art. Anybody familiar with this cat? Obey Giant. Some of you may actually have some apparel from Obey Giant, myself included. A lot of people would say, well, that means you fell victim to the propaganda. No, I collect it specifically because it is based on that propaganda. And I happen to love the propaganda art aesthetic. In any case, these propaganda methods that I just gave you all these examples of have come to influence art and culture in a way that now, oddly enough, communist-style propaganda is making a very good living for a devout capitalist who's making a ton of money off of t-shirts and jeans. Oh, savor the irony. Good stuff, huh? Now, plant the seed and get out. We'll come back later and plant more seeds. Here's another way that it's influenced the culture. There was a magazine that I was once subscribed to that always leaned sort of left, but now they've gone hard leftist, and let me simplify it. Corporations are bad, man. Multinational corporations are really, really bad. I mean, except for Pfizer, because great leaders said Pfizer was good. That's where the left is now. But there were people that had worked for advertising firms, and advertising, as we're getting ready to go into the next bullet point, advertising is the number one use of mind control and propaganda, right? Because we live in a consumerist culture. that is the quickest way to get people's attention, to hold people's minds, to establish brand loyalty, and to take the controls of their own thought process away from them. Advertising, advertising, advertising. They are the ones that pay the psychiatrists and psychologists millions of dollars a year to figure out how to get inside your head. Well, you had people with Adbusters. And you really should check out their website, man, because in spite of the fact that they're hard leftists, truth is truth, no matter who speaks it. You'll be able to get a lot out of it. They did what they called anti-ads, I believe. These advertising people would take the way that propaganda works in advertising and they would turn it against the company that was trying to market it. Here's, for example, Absolute, right? You remember the Absolute ads? Absolute vodka, Absolute on ice. Huh? How about that? It's a statement on drunk driving. They planted a seed, and you didn't need but 5 seconds to figure out what that was about. That's a toe tag on a dead body. Absolute. Oh, we're going to associate Absolute vodka with toe tags on dead bodies for drunk driving. Ah, yeah, all they needed was a couple of seconds. Here's another one. 5 seconds. What do you think about drinking Absolute vodka now? What do you tie Absolute vodka to? Ooh, my pee-pee doesn't work, which eventually becomes an obsession for men. Yeah. Calvin Klein obsession. Get it? Right? What are we obsessed about? Yeah, we're obsessed about the side of our dicks. You see what they're doing here. They are taking the classic propaganda techniques of advertising and they are turning it on itself. And it's brilliant. It's brilliant. But again, because we all have our own biases and our own leanings, they will do this against specific corporations like Absolute, because it's alcohol. They'll do it against tobacco manufacturers. I miss my lung, Bob. Welcome to Marlboro country, right? They'll turn it against, say, fast food companies like McDonald's and talk about all the additives and the horrible things that happen if you eat a McDonald's burger. They'll even turn it against, oh, wait, Balenciaga. And this was Balenciaga before the kitty porn thing. We'll get into that another day. We sell you shit to call you ugly to sell you more shit. They're turning advertising on itself to make statements against these companies. But again, we all have our biases. And the problem with Adbusters is they will do it against the easy targets. Just like most people that slag religion, they always pick the easiest target. They pick Christianity because there's less chance of consequence. There's no pushback, right? You slag Islam, you will either make yourself a political pariah or they'll blow you up, right? You push against Judaism, well, now you're an anti-Semite and you lose your career and you lose your social standing, right? You push against Christianity because the worst we're going to do is forgive you and maybe pray for you until you come for the kids, and then we'll nail your ass to a cross. Test me. Anyway, sidebar. Well, sort of, more caffeine. That's what I need. Right now, all my Christian brothers out there are like, bro, you said what you said. Yeah, I did. Here's some companies that you won't see them attack. Pfizer. We can't attack Pfizer because Pfizer is in line with the official narrative. Pfizer is in line with the demands of the leftist orthodoxy. They are not going to do anti-ads like that. Now, if I'm wrong, if they have done one and you guys fact check that and you go, hey, man, they did one about Pfizer, please let me know. And I will be happy to acknowledge, wow, maybe they've changed their ways. My point is this. I can disagree with their political ideology, right? I can disagree with their disingenuousness. That's my college word. I got like 3 of those. I can disagree with their disingenuousness and their duplicitousness. That's my other college word. But what they are doing is stating facts and presenting it in ways that are accessible. They are turning this science of mind control against itself. They're taking the evil and using it for good, dude. If you really want to dumb it down to Bill and Ted land for all you bong hitters out there, whatever. You guys get the point. Good Lord, that was over 20 examples right there. I got quite a bit to clear out when we get done with this. Here's something I'm going to put up right now, and I'll be able to check back now that we're past the visual part. Be able to check back a little more on the sidebar comments. Here we go. Christians, yep. Christians turn the other cheek too often. Valid point. You will when they're no longer useful. Hey, you fuck off my smokes. Hey man, I'm just throwing it. Look, I'm just throwing it out that they made the ad. You already know, man. You already know. The fact doesn't have a left or right. It just gets twisted both ways. Agree. G-Dub, glad you made it. They reactivated the old bases. We're delivering construction and military gear as they rebuild and retrofit it all. We're absolutely getting ready for some major shit soon. Well, guess who gets to rock me to sleep tonight? You're going to hit me with that kind of nightmare fuel. Kind of late today working our ass a whole new division into Alaska. Such a large buildup. Wow. Hit me with a personal message, G-Dub, or even a text message because you got my number. Nicodemus knew Jesus was the Messiah and turned away. Didn't want to lose his comfortable life. Thank you, Tommy, for the scriptural example. I really, really appreciate that. And you're right. We do turn the other cheek too often. The larger point was, here we go. I consider myself a Christian, but I run out of other cheeks pretty fast, and as well you should. The larger point was they haven't seen our wrath yet. For as much as they like to say that we are the violent extremists and that we are oppressive and we are hateful and we are this and we are that, they haven't seen any of that come out of us yet. Not at all. Believe me, folks, all you Jesus bashers, and I'm not talking about people who don't believe. Non-believers, man, I can still break bread with you. Pagans, heathens, I can still break bread with you, man. As long as you're a righteous individual, I have no problem with it. The people that go out of their way, the candle pissers, right? Okay, guys, right? What do we say? What do we say? The new hashtag candle pissers. All you candle pissers that just like to bash for people out here like, you haven't seen it yet. You haven't seen wrath yet. Believe me. Those Jesus people need to start fucking with us. Brother, you will feel it when we fuck with you. Okay? Pardon my use of the F-bomb. Really been doing better on that. But brother, believe me, you will feel it. There will be no doubt. For all that we have held back, when that righteous wrath is unleashed, you will be praying to our God. Not because we demand it, but because you will be desperately grasping for any hope of mercy for what you are going to be forced to endure, for what you have done to children and good people. There, everybody feel better now? I feel better now. That was cathartic. All right. So, let's jump into advertising, shall we? Everybody got that? Can everybody see that at the bottom of your screen? www.uvm.edu. Follow that link, and I'm going to leave it floating there. I'm just going to leave it floating there. Maybe you guys did, and maybe you guys didn't see a little video that I posted from Joe Rogan's Instagram earlier about the way that they color your this is a departure from advertising, by the way, about the way that they color your opinion when they were doing things about, no one is above that. They showed the Trump protesters outside the courthouse, right? And it looked like a large crowd. It was just a steady line of people, and they were all scrunched in together, and everybody had their picket signs up. And then they faded back. You guys can find this. It's posted on my fan page, and I'm gonna repost it. I'm gonna repost it to my fan page again when this is over with. But you fade the cameras back, and it was literally 5 people. It was 5 people, all scrunched up together, right? Holding their signs up, surrounded by literally 25 news reporters and cameras. But the frame, again, framing is everything. And then we'll get off into advertising. Framing is everything. I can tell you this from being on the production end of fight promotions, okay? When we were shooting video, any fight promotion I've ever worked with, shooting video, when they talk to the camera people, and the camera people usually already know, what we are trying to do is show a full house. And sometimes we're shooting early during the prelims and there's not that many people in the seats. So we find the place that is the most crowded. We zoom in on those guys and just do a slow panning shot across that really, really crowded section. And then later in the night, right, as the place fills up, now we can do the wide shot. Look at all the grandstands are full. We're sold out, right? That's how it works. Framing works the same way. Look at all those protesters in front of the courthouse. And it's literally 5 people scrunched in together. But you do that narrow frame. And so you can imagine, that there's this thunderous roar of protesters outside the place when in fact there are 5 people. They did that at the NRA convention in Houston. Were any of you guys in Houston? Right? We just want to be left alone. Yep. Never confuse the fact that online violence is the fact that I don't understand it. I won't leave doubts impressed to that level. Yep. I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. Oh my goodness. It's so good to be surrounded by men of God, men of faith, and men of strength. If they are not men of faith and men of God, they are at least men of strength. And I thank God for every single one of the people that are in my circle. They always pray to Jesus just before the end. Yes, Tom, they do. Getting back to framing, right? You do the narrow frame shot like that. But that one picture, got picked up by the Associated Press and got printed. And you can find this in the video clip from Joe Rogan's Instagram. It got printed by 15 different national news outlets. 15 different news outlets printed that picture as if it were the God's truth of 100 protesters in front of the courthouse, when in fact it was only 5 people. Control the stimulus, control the response. Why do you think your relatives and your loved ones who watch that Maddow guy and are devout watchers of MSNBC, why are they so out of touch? Because that is their perception of the world. There's a man I'm going to bring up, a name that I'm going to bring up, Jonathan Haidt. Everybody got that? Has everybody got that tag written down now? Or at least you'll be able to return to it later in the video, okay? Because I'm going to do this really, really quick. Jonathan Haidt. Yes. I want you guys to look up his work. And I may have misspelled his name. I may have put an H in there where it didn't belong. But I want you guys to look into the work of Jonathan Haidt. Why are your people so out of touch? Because of the effectiveness of propaganda. Propaganda tends to insulate people. And if you think you're above it, what news channel do you watch? I'm just asking, what news channel do you watch? Oh, well, I watch like 4 or 5 different, yeah. But you got the one that you really lean on. And what is it? What is it? One that probably speaks to the narrative that you had already figured out for yourself, right? They are the same. However, there is an important difference between the left and the right. Jonathan Haidt has done, and he's repeated this study, and the results were repeated time after time after time after time. He had people self-identify as conservatives, moderates, and liberals, okay? People who self-identified as conservatives got 70% of their news, right? Got 60% of their news from conservative outlets and 40% of their news from liberal outlets. Okay, which meant that they had to go looking for some of their stuff because the overwhelming majority of the mainstream press is left-leaning. But they got 60% from conservative sources, 40% from liberal sources. Okay, so there was a balance. Self-identified moderates, it was exactly the opposite. 40% from conservative sources, 60% from liberal sources. And it's much easier to find those liberal sources because, again, most of the mainstream media is left-leaning. Then they went to self-identified liberals. When they got to self-identified liberals, 80 to 90% of their news was gleaned from liberal sources because they're easy to find, they're everywhere, and they have no desire to hear a conflicting opinion. So when you wonder why your otherwise intelligent birth mother, or you wonder why your loved one or your mate or your wife or your coworker, why you start talking about things that you know to be true, to be factual, and you start talking about it and their eyes glaze over. Oh man, what kind of idiot would believe that? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Forgive them, brother, for they know not what they do not know. Propaganda is very, very effective. And when it is with intent, what did we say earlier? Soviet propaganda was just going for the power structure, right? It was just words for the power structure, and you had to learn to read between the lines. Americans think they're getting objective information. Even in the days of Cronkite, we weren't. And now they're not making any illusions about it. They are giving the power structures propaganda. And it's got nothing to do. Think about this for a minute. What did we know once upon a time about the left? What were things that they were totally against? Corporations and war. And yet, the new leftist orthodoxy bows down at the temple of Pfizer because they are the experts, and they never met a war they didn't like. They're totally down with sending to, hi, Danelle, good to see you, brother, good to see you. They are totally down with sending $150 billion to a butcher in Ukraine. What happened? What happened to the peace and love generation that you guys used to tell us you were? You're down with the leftist orthodoxy. You changed. There's no ideological integrity with these people. They would not know a legit, objective, ideological principle if it bit them in their pinched, bitter, liberal little asses. They would not know. Okay, Bart, you're showing your biases right now. Yeah, that's precisely the point. I'm showing you my bias. So when I show you my bias, you know that if I'm telling you something, you've got to run it through that filter. Hey, Bart leans right, so I better process this things a different way. When you think, like with a news source, that you are getting objective, legitimate, unbiased information, you don't run it through that filter. And this is where Americans have been taken for a ride. Again, getting back to the propaganda element, let me see. Where the hell was I? Gosh darn, man. I got lost here for a minute. Be able to keep track of the sidebar here for a minute. This is the way that framing is used. Framing in a photographic sense, you have 5 protesters, you squeeze them all in together, they put up their signs, you narrow the shot down to this, and it gives the impression that there are hundreds of people outside the courthouse demonstrating against Trump, when in fact there are only 5 people. I don't know how many of my Houston friends were there for the NRA convention. Okay. The NRA convention was in Houston, I want to say 2013, maybe. I went, I was packing. Everybody in the building was packing. There were no metal detectors. Nobody gave a damn. The news lied about that. They outright lied about that. And the news stood outside the building where a virtual army of protesters have gathered. There were nine protesters. And what did all the local network affiliates do? They got right up in a tight shot with all these people like milling about. They were all crowded. They had wide open spaces in downtown Houston. There was plenty of room. They crowded all together with their signs up to make it look like it was this huge crowd. And the media indulged them by framing it nice and tight to make it look like a big crowd. This is the way that it works. And a lot of people don't understand that. But again, you've got to be somewhat forgiving of these people who are your family members, your friends, your coworkers, because, and I'm going to challenge you to do something here in a minute. Before we get into advertising, I'm going to challenge you to do something. Here is an example of framing intellectually, right? And I actually did a YouTube video on this. When Omicron hit, right? Omicron, the Omicron strain of COVID, which was a joke, which made a cold look like a tough guy. Omicron hit. And the headline was on Rachel Maddow's, that Maddow guy was on his Twitter feed. But this is what I did with it. And Sonny is big on this too. Facts, the difference between facts and the truth, right? That resonates on a whole lot of levels. You can give someone facts, but you're not giving them the truth. Here's the way I framed it. Omicron is now in 89 countries, and it's killed more COVID patients than Fauci has treated in his entire career. That was a fact. That was a fact. It was in 89 countries, and at that point, it had killed more patients than Fauci had treated his whole career. Those were the facts. Here's the truth. It had killed one person because, and again, your liberal friends, your MSNBC friends, your bow down before the high priesthood of medicine friends, your follow the science friends, they don't understand this. Fauci has never treated a single COVID patient in his entire career. He is not a virologist. Okay? He has stumbled his way to the top. He hasn't treated a single COVID patient. So when I give you that headline, it's in 89 countries and it's killed more people than Fauci's ever treated. Oh my God, run to the hills. Framing is giving you facts while leading you away from the truth. It's a very important method, and it's one that we all need to school ourselves to look out for. Let's get into advertising. Did you guys go to that link that I gave you? Everybody, what is that? Not watching the news leaves you uninformed. Watching the news leaves you misinformed. Yeah, Denzel actually said that in an interview, and it's absolutely true. It takes a lot of effort and discernment. Thank you, Brother Doug, because what do we always pray for here? We offer up those prayers above and beyond anything else. We pray for discernment and clarity, because that's what carries the light through the darkness. That's what carries the signal through the noise. Filter through everything to find anything that is close to the truth. It's a taxing but necessary labor to undertake. I would go so far as to say essential, Doug. You're absolutely right. Fauci's like a project manager. Man, Fauci's a shill and a hack. But anyway, different ballgame. So that link that I gave you guys, let me pop it back up here again. This one. Yes, here we go. uvm.edu. This goes under all the techniques that are used in advertising. Now, back when I was just a young buck, just a kid, in 6th grade, no less, and then we had to do it again in 9th grade, we actually had a mini course. It was a 2-week mini course that we took that was part of the high school curriculum that taught us how to differentiate fact from opinion, how to differentiate and identify propaganda. Now, if you guys go to that link, it'll go over all of these things. Name calling or stereotyping. Examples: Republican, right-wing extremist, damn libtards. We're all guilty, man. We're all guilty. And if you play to that narrative, guess what? You can be victimized too. Let me go ahead and get this example out of the way. I held on to my belief in anthropogenic climate change, global warming, climate change with the big trademark symbol. I believed that as late as 2013, 2014. I still believed that. Part of that was because I was hoping for a climate disaster, because I wanted to see billions of people die off the face of the planet. I was not always the nicest guy, but I believed it, right? Because again, some of these methods, they strike out. You worry about imagine being called a Holocaust denier, okay? Imagine that. Imagine the weight that those words carry. And this is why propaganda works. Because again, you're not appealing to the conscious mind, you're going straight to the subconscious. You don't have to argue with someone's numerical observations or statistics if you can just plant a seed and paint a picture of a guy, right? Here's the thing. You don't have to say, well, this is how they disposed of 6 million bodies, and this is why, in spite of that, there are no mass graves, and this is why there weren't that many Jews living in Europe at the time of this, and this is why this couldn't have possibly happened, and this is why a modern crematory oven takes 2 to 3 hours to eliminate a body, and yet 4 managed to do. Yeah, you don't have to do any of that. You don't have to make the numerical case. You just go, dude, you're a Holocaust denier. Oh, fuck. Who wants to be that? You don't have to make a numerical case when someone comes at you with the irrefutable facts that African Americans are 13% of the United States population that commit over 50% of the violent crimes, 88% of which are committed against other blacks. These are irrefutable numbers. You just point and go, racist. Oh God, I don't want to be that. I'll go you one better. This is gonna stick because a lot of y'all are on the same page with those two, but I'm gonna rub some people the wrong way on purpose right now. You can point out the irrefutable fact that pit bulls are 6% of the American dog population and are responsible for upwards of 89% of fatal dog attacks. You can't refute that. Those are the numbers. So what do you come back? Dog hater, breed hater, the canine equivalent of racist. No, I don't hate the breed. I'm just observing facts. But again, you don't have to make the argument. This is the way propaganda works. You are dealing with going from a factual equation to an emotional equation. Advertising. Look at advertising. They are notorious for that. Virtue words and glittering generalities. Organic, natural, scientific. Follow the science. Sustainable. There's another one. You know what else is sustainable? Nuclear waste. You know what else is natural? You know what else is natural? Arsenic. Deification. With the lunatics, Mother Earth, right? That carries a lot of weight. Guys, on the conservative end, we are just as guilty. Why? Because we don't say it is our birthright. We say it is our what? Who gave us the right? We're going to do this. It is our what given right? What given right? It is our God-given right. A news Berkey. I like that. We're just as guilty. We're just as guilty. Because even though we have the faith, you can't expect everybody to share that faith. You start talking about God-given rights, you are into propaganda territory. You are playing their game. You can say it is your natural right, your birthright, but when you say it is your God-given right, you are speaking to a specific audience, and you are, whether you know it or not, engaging in the same propaganda that the left does, only from the other side. Do I happen to agree with you? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. But we got to make the statement. We got to call it what it is. Anyway, you go through that thing and it'll do all of it. Testimonials. There's another. Advertising uses that. Some celebrity testifying for a product. What do they do? What do they do it with now? Politicians. Everybody's all aflutter about Taylor Swift and her impending. I don't give a damn. I mean, come on, dude. Come on, really? I'm almost inclined. To want to slap some of you guys around for that. Taylor Swift is a psyop. All right. Can you make a case for that? First of all, put down the dab rig. Stop doing bong rips. Is she a psyop? Maybe. You want to know how to eliminate the strength of a psyop? Stop paying attention. Every time you mention this claptrap, you are giving strength to their what? The P word. What have we been on? You're giving strength to their propaganda, their narrative. Anyway, guys, I want you to go to that link because it isolates. And this was an older version of this list were what was used in those classes that we had to take on propaganda recognition. And when you go through this, I want you, on every one of these, there are 22. There are 22. These are the two challenges that I'm going to give you. Two challenges that I'm going to give you for next week. Okay. These are tactics used to manipulate an audience by creating the impression that you want to be a part of the majority. And why does that play in? We'll go into that in a minute. All these propaganda techniques, I want you guys to go to that link and I want you to look. Name calling or stereotyping, virtue words, deification, transfer, testimonial, plain folks appeal, bandwagon appeal, artificial dichotomy. I want you to go through all of these. And I want you to find an example on the left, and I want you to find an example on the right. So you are holding them to account, but you're also having to pay attention to your own thought process. When you play into propaganda, you're no longer walking in truth. Propaganda can be an effective tool. There are times where it might have to be used. Memes are a form of propaganda, and that's one where the right has all the power. We all know that the left can't meme. Memes are brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Anyway, I want you to find an example on the left, and I want you to find an example on the right, because I don't want you to get into the habit of, as the scripture says, pointing out the splinter in somebody else's eye when you got a log sticking out of your own head. If you want to truly recognize the power of propaganda to get in your head and twist you up, you have to be able to look at it in the full spectrum across the board. That's a very difficult thing to do. So I want you guys to go to that link, all right? Propaganda techniques to recognize. That is the name of it. Go back. That link is there. And if you don't go to that link, go to Google and just say propaganda techniques to recognize. It'll put you on some website that is going to do some version of this same thing. But I want you to go through, like for instance, right? Like for instance, deification, right? Deification. Method number 3, deification. When the left uses that, they'll refer to Gaia or Mother Earth to deify their green ecological cause. When we start talking about birthrights, what do? We call on the boss man. Call on the boss man. It's a God-given right. Now, I happen to believe that, right? I happen to believe that those birthrights are given to us by God. I happen to believe that. But you have to understand that when you call that down like that, you are engaging in propaganda. Now, if that's how you got to get your point across, cool. No harm, no foul, not judging, but realize what you're doing. Plain folks appeal, all right? If you're going from the left, what do they always say? We're the friend of the working class. None of these people have calluses on their hands. Not one of them have calluses on their hands. They have never worked a manual labor job in their life. Why does the working class keep voting against their interests? We're the friend of the working class. You don't understand the first thing about the working class, but that's how the left will address it. We are the friend. We are the ally of the working class. How does the right use that? How does the right use that? Same plain folks appeal, right? You get a country artist, right? Or you get some guy pressing the flesh, or you point out the fact that he grew up in a small farming community. You do the same thing. You're trying to appeal to the working class. Whether you are a friend of the working class or not, that is subjective, right? But this is the propaganda technique. Scapegoat. There's another one. When the left do it, oh shit. Well, I mean, that's easy. Technique number 12, scapegoating. When the left does it, they just call Trump. They call Trump's name like it was a mantra, right? Everything in the world, every bad thing that has ever happened. The kidnapping of the Lindbergh baby is Trump's fault. That's the scapegoat. When we do it, what do we do? What do we do? Cultural Marxism, leftist policies, libtards, they're to blame for all of our, okay. Does it matter what the truth is? No. Does it matter what I agree with? No. But realize that that is a propaganda method. The ad hominem attack. When the left do it, no matter what, again, what I was going over earlier, the ad hominem attack. You're presenting facts. You're presenting numbers. You're presenting statistics. And once they get in over their head, Nazi! How does the right do? Exactly the polar opposite. I mean, it's seldom that a leftist can actually back their case with facts, but on the rare occasion that they get one right. Bill Maher, right? Bill Maher comes around with something often. Um, Glenn Greenwald presents some excellent cases from the left. But people will, if people want to shoot down Greenwald, he's presenting a factual case, say, against Bolsonaro in Brazil. I might not agree with that case, but he's presenting facts against Bolsonaro. And what do they say? What do they say about Greenwald? You're anti-American, man, because Edward Snowden's a traitor. You're attacking the messenger instead of the message, that kind of thing. So that is your homework assignment. I want you to find propaganda techniques to recognize, follow that link, and find one example on the left and one example on the right. Bandwagon appeal is going to be good. Now, why is this important going forward? Because of three things. Cognitive warfare, fifth generation warfare, and mass formation psychosis. This is where we're going to close, guys. This is what I'm going to bring it home, because I've given you all these examples and some of your eyes are starting to glaze over already, and I totally get that. Cognitive warfare. You do not have to destroy a population. Cognitive warfare is focused on changing a population's opinions and changing their behavior based on changing their way of thinking. You guys are familiar with TikTok, very cute videos. Maybe some of you guys have already made fun of the people who are saying that the Chinese are using it against us. You don't understand how that algorithm works. The Chinese are using every method in the world to try to undermine the United States. The Chinese communists are easily, far and away, our most dangerous adversary. Enemy. I'll go so far as to use the word enemy. They are an existential threat to the United States. Half of our government is already compromised to the Chinese. I spew that as a statement of fact, not as a derogatory term. By your works ye shall know them. By their works ye shall know them. TikTok is there as a cultural influence. They influence the culture in many different ways. They have bought half of Hollywood. What does Hollywood control? Hollywood is a propaganda machine. That's what you have to understand. Your mind might, but most people's minds don't belong to them anymore. And you have to be somewhat forgiving of these people because they are completely overwhelmed. No one ever taught them how to think critically. They didn't have a class in sixth grade and again in ninth grade to teach them how to spot propaganda and to teach, spotting fact from opinion. Why? It was pulled out of the curriculum. You can't create good consumers like that. My generation was the last one that had the benefit of that. So when you look at these younger people, some people who are already coming from a place of honesty and they want to believe in the goodness of liberals and leftism, categorically ignorant, but they're being reinforced from every major cultural institution. I say this without a shred of hyperbole, people. They control all of it. The left as a monolith. Well, now, Bart, you're just engaging in name calling and that's propaganda. Maybe. Okay. I'll even concede that. But look at the facts that I'm presenting. Don't engage in an ad hominem attack by attacking me instead of my message in response to that. You see how this works? They control academia. They control, more to the point, social media and entertainment. Where do people get their information now? The tide is turning, but the power of that propaganda has undermined all of the root cultural elements of the West. Our minds no longer belong to us. We're chasing the next dopamine hit. We're buying the products that our celebrity of choice has told us to buy. We're following the candidate that our celebrity of choice has told us to follow. For all you Taylor Swift as a psyop people, whatever. Right up there with flat earth idiots. But because of cognitive warfare, this is something we need to be aware of, because when those propaganda techniques are being utilized against you and you are taught, you are coaxed into believing that this thing is good and this thing is necessarily bad because it's connected with this other thing, you are no longer in control of your thought process. Think about these people whose eyes glaze over when you talk to them about any of these principles. How much time do they spend on TikTok? How much time do they spend watching that Maddow guy on MSNBC? How much? Or Joy Reid? Don't even get me started. So cognitive warfare is a very real threat, and this is why we have to be in control of our minds all the time, because they are literally trying to change the thought process of an entire culture to make us vulnerable. You couple that with actual acts of terrorist violence that are going to be spilling over the southern border, and 200,000 people a year dying of fentanyl poisoning, and human trafficking, and every other evil damn thing that is a product of that. How much worse does it get when we're not even in control of our own minds anymore? Now, we've hit the tipping point. People are starting to shift. We can see it. That's why the legacy media is dying. That's why the alternative media is growing. That's why people would rather watch a right-wing bigot like Tucker Carlson than spend any time in front of CNN. Because they know that right-wing bigot, quote unquote, is more likely to tell them the damn truth. Cognitive warfare is important when it comes to recognizing propaganda techniques to avoid the results of that cognitive warfare, to make yourself less vulnerable. What am I saying? Learn to fight so you're harder to kill. Learn the techniques of propaganda so you are less vulnerable to cognitive warfare, because they are waging that every single day. Fifth generation warfare. What are we talking about with regard to fifth generation warfare? Non-kinetic military action. This is the literal definition. Non-kinetic military action. That means we're not being attacked with weapons. We're not being gassed. We're not being poisoned. I mean, you can say fentanyl, yeah. We're not being gassed. We're not being poisoned. We're not being attacked by weapons. Social engineering and misinformation. Do you think that the Chinese communists give two flying at six rolling donuts about your pronouns or your gender identity? Do you think they have any tolerance for that in their society whatsoever? You would be severely mistaken. Which is why they're going to win. Do you understand what I just said? Oh, you're a transphobe! No. I am making observations. They realize that the purpose of the military is to win wars. That the number one priority for the military is lethality. And they know that putting these people in those units or giving two shits about your gender pronouns takes away from the lethality of the military, and they don't care. Meanwhile, our military bases are flying pride flags. Our military bases are putting up flags in support of BLM, which is a what? A Marxist organization. You guys tracking? This is how social engineering works. The people that trumpet the loudest. What's another? Misinformation. Misinformation is another tool of fifth generation warfare. Unfortunately, the power structure, which is sold out to those foreign concerns, are the ones who govern what misinformation is. And unfortunately, misinformation is anything that the ruling party doesn't want you to know about. COVID being a lab leak was misinformation. Hunter Biden's laptop was misinformation. Meanwhile, they are the single largest purveyors. Do you understand? So why do you have to learn the way propaganda works? Because of fifth generation warfare. Because when that is the warfare and the social engineering warfare and all of these things that are coming your way that are trying to undermine the institutional example of the West, if you are not sharp and you don't understand how propaganda works, even you are vulnerable. What, you don't have emotions? You don't have biases? What if, let's just say, what if if we're just making shit up right now. What if Trump were a psyop? What if Trump was an enemy agent? What if Trump was a tool of the power structure? Now, I don't happen to believe that. What if Elon Musk is the Antichrist? See, I got to check myself on that one because I happen to love Elon. We all know. What if? If I don't know how to recognize propaganda and it turns out that St. Musk does happen to be the Antichrist, I'm going to look pretty damn foolish, aren't I? All of you MAGA guys, if it turns out that Trump is a secret Zionist agent, you're going to look pretty foolish, aren't you? What I'm saying is those techniques cut both ways. That's basically what I'm saying. You have to be aware of it. You have to be aware of how you do it. You have to be aware of how you're vulnerable to it. You have to be aware of how they do it and how they are vulnerable to it, to where it becomes a weapon. And what is a weapon but a tool? Makes it a weapon in your hands, you understand it. If you are in a weapon-based fight with any other, right? Maybe his mark will be Neuralink. Brother, and see, and that's the thing, Tommy. It's like I constantly process this stuff. Neuralink is probably the one thing that really, 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 really troubles me about Elon. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. The Chinese don't have to win. They just have to make the opposition unwilling to resist. Exactly. And that, of course, is the social engineering, the misinformation, the cognitive warfare, the fifth generation stuff. That's what I'm talking about. And when you have people who don't know how to spot that propaganda, suddenly laying down your arms seems like a good idea. If you understand the way that propaganda works, it becomes a weapon. Now, if I am going into a gunfight, right? And I know that I'm running an AK platform, and I know that the other guy is running an AK platform. I know the capabilities and limitations of my weapon system, and that is going to dictate my tactics along with other considerations. It's the same with propaganda. Gun is a tool. The AK is a tool. The way that you choose to use it is what's going to dictate your methods. Do you think that I don't use propaganda methods to communicate my message? Do you think that my knowledge of what is going to reach people isn't somewhat guided, or rather doesn't somewhat guide the way that I approach delivery? I want to bring you a message, and I know the most effective way to deliver that message, and I have honed those skills. Now imagine if I were working for the adversary. Do you understand? When I say eternal vigilance, that means you process everything. How many times have you heard me say it? I'm not your damn guru. Fact check everything that I say. Process everything that I say through your own lens and see if it passes a smell test. Why? Because I know that there are plenty of people that understand the workings of the human mind just as well as I do, and they are out for far less beneficial ends. What's really beneficial anyway? Put down the bong, Sparky. Far less beneficial ends. The day you stop asking what if, you've lost the game already. Absolutely. I'm leaving that link up too, by the way. Stargate was a psyop. T Swift is not. There you go. I love you, Tommy. But the third and most important bit, mass formation psychosis. You want to know how propaganda works? Let me give you a little example of how propaganda works, even in social media, even in search engines. Why? Because Google plays games with its algorithms. Google intentionally manipulates its algorithms. Roman, if you're still here, I know that you will, Roman, I know for a fact that you will testify to that. Google and Twitter prior to Elon, they manipulate the algorithm. to steer your results. Every social media company does it. Google, being the world's largest search engine, they've been caught doing it. But when I went to look up mass formation psychosis, right, I expected a dictionary definition. I expected some examples. I expected some references. Blah blah blah. You know what I got? This was the first thing that popped up. You ready for this? Mass formation psychosis on Google, right? The very first result out of 2,760,000. Very first result. Mass formation psychosis is a term that was used on the Joe Rogan podcast by a formerly respected medical researcher, Robert Malone. He used it to describe what was happening in the United States and elsewhere in terms of people's overwhelming acceptance of the COVID-19 vaccination. Go back and read that again. In fact, right now, everybody Google it, mass formation psychosis, and that'll be your top search result. So what have they said in one simple 2-sentence paragraph? What have they said here? Instead of giving you a definition of what it is and how it affects populations and how it is intentionally put into practice, what they have told you is that you probably heard about it from that Joe Rogan guy, a dumb person's idea of a smart person, that crazy guy, that super masculine bow hunter MMA dude that thinks he's smarter than he is, because that's the bubble that they live in. That's the first thing that they've said. By a formerly respected medical researcher, Robert Malone, MD. Who says that he's formerly respected? That guy still carries a ton of weight because of his involvement. And Charlie, if you're still here, I want your feedback on this one. Robert Malone. He was not the father of mRNA technology, but he was one of the early pioneers in mRNA. So don't tell me he was formerly respected. That's completely subjective. You stopped respecting him, not you, but the general, they stopped respecting him when he went against the official narrative on the COVID vaccine. So that's the second thing they told us. It was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and you know about that Rogan guy, by a researcher that used to be a respected doctor. And what is the third thing they told us? Very, very slick, that third delivery, in terms of people's overwhelming acceptance of the COVID-19 vaccination. Overwhelming acceptance? We put it out there. Do you know what it took to get to overwhelming acceptance? So what have they communicated to you? That if you dig Joe Rogan, you're a moron. That if you listen to Robert Malone, you're listening to a hack and a quack who's been discredited. And if you believe any of these things, then you are outside the mainstream majority because you reject the COVID-19 vaccination. You want to know how propaganda works? There it is, in 1 2-sentence paragraph. They didn't have to tell you anything. They didn't have to plead a case. They didn't have to tell you who Joe Rogan was and why you shouldn't listen to him. They didn't have to tell you who Robert Malone was and why he was discredited, if he was discredited. They didn't have to tell you the exact numbers and what it took to get there with the COVID-19 vaccination. They dropped 2 sentences on you and went straight into your subconscious. Do you understand how powerful that is now? They reached right into your head and in 2 sentences turned your whole perception of what just happened. What is mass formation psychosis? It's what happens. It's the madness of crowds, for lack of a better word. It comes down to that social engineering. It comes down to that cognitive warfare. You can change an entire society's perceptions if you have the means to reach them. Who's got the means to reach them now? And I'm going to leave you with this because it's good news and bad news. Who's got the means to reach them now? The bad news is that the overwhelming people that are doing the reaching are in the cultural institutions, which are controlled by the left, which are controlled by the power structure. I'm the resistance. No, you're not, dude. You're the machine now. Mainstream news, social media, search engines, all of that controlled, right? That's who has the power to reach people now. But here's the good news. is that this same internet enables everyone, even though they can throttle my reach and they can shadow ban me and they can do whatever they want to do, I have the power. You have the power. Every single one of us has the power to reach the world. Can they throttle that? Yes. Do they? Yes. Is that a reason to quit? Absolutely not. I put this thing out damn near every Sunday. And maybe I only reach a couple hundred people here, a couple hundred people there. My best weeks, I've reached a couple thousand. But you know what? If you've got 100 of me, and each one of those 100 of me reaches 100 people, that quickly turns into 1,000. That quickly turns into 10,000. That quickly turns into 100,000, a million. How did the Soviet Union, speaking of authoritarian states that use propaganda, how did it collapse? Because we outspent them? Yeah. Because we had a better economic system? Yeah. Collapsed under its own weight? Yeah. But how did it end? One little conversation at a time. Look at all the other Eastern Bloc states. One little conversation at a time. Where eventually their narrative wasn't enough. Great leader is great because we have greatened him. Joe Biden is 100% cognitively on point. Our military is as robust as it's ever been. Our economy is booming. Now here's the thing. You've got a torrent of those messages being hurled at you. But you know deep down it's bullshit. What did Orwell say? We're going to close with Orwell, man. Fundamental command of the party was to ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears. And that is what the party is asking that you do. But you can't. I'll say it again. Fundamentally, people are suckers for what? The truth. Truth is coming around. The truth is coming around. What do you think is, I'll play whose IQ is higher? Well, most of them agreed. Oh, thank you, James. Thank you, man. I've missed you too, man. I'm getting ready to check in. Pre-Elon Twitter banned Robert Malone. Yes, they did, as a matter of fact. They'll do everything to make beef look bad. Yeah, I mean, there's propaganda, right? Anyway, don't want to get sidetracked. They're asking you to ignore the evidence of your own eyes and ears, and we can no longer do that. We no longer afford to. So their narrative is collapsing. What happens then? People go looking for truth. They find it in a million little conversations just like the one that we're having now. So the most important thing is when you know something to be true, you spread it, you share it. When you know something to be false and evil, you call it out. That's how we win this thing. Recognize, do a deep dive, take into account all of the ways that they seek to get in and control you. Revisit the things that we've gone over here before. The Ash experiments, the Ash nonconformity experiments, remember? Or the Ash conformity experiment. The Milgram experiment, terrifying. The Ash experiments and the Milgram experience. Go back and revisit that. But remember that your mind is not necessarily your own. Let me say that again. Your mind is not necessarily your own. You could be playing out somebody else's script right now and not even be aware of it. That is how sinister the techniques are, and that is how malleable our minds are. If you are a man of faith, you guard your soul. Well, I say to you, whether you're a man of faith or a man on a secular path or a hardcore evangelical atheist or a pagan or a heathen, my Asa true brothers from back in the day, guard your soul. But before they can get to your soul, They got to go through your mind. That's what I want you to come away from this with. You understand? You guard your soul, you guard your heart, you guard your feelings, you guard your emotions, you guard all of that. What is the gatekeeper for your heart, your soul? What is the gatekeeper? It's your beliefs, it's your perceptions, it's your mind. So this isn't a false dichotomy of having to choose between one or the other. When you look to safeguard your mind, when you look to protect your mind and your thought process, you are, in fact, looking to protect your soul, your heart, your feelings, your emotions, your loves, your hates, your beliefs, and everything that lies on the other side of that gatekeeper. So make sure to learn these things so that gatekeeper is ever vigilant. And every single thing that tries to make its way through the gates of your mind to reach and corrupt your soul is met with a fist, a blade, and pain. Simply for my brothers in Christ. How does the adversary work? Deception. Because he gives you facts, but not the truth. Deception. If you are looking to guard your soul, guard first your mind. And the way to guard that mind is to understand the nature of the enemies that will throw themselves against that gate. Make sure to reinforce that gate and put your biggest, baddest, toughest guards on it. Keep that chin down, those hands up, always looking forward. Get ready to knuckle the hell up. Because every single day, you don't have to worry about that big guy with the cloven hooves. You got to worry about that guy selling you cornflakes. You have to worry about some archdemon reeking of sulfur and flames. You got to worry about that guy that's trying to tell you who to vote for. They all want a piece of your mind. They all want to take the controls from you. Even if just for a second, a little jerk on the steering wheel. Don't give it to them. Guard your mind as if it were guarding your soul, because it is the gatekeeper to your soul. Ever vigilant. Guard that mind with everything you have. Deus Vult, God wills it. I'm going to close with a prayer. Lord God, when I pray always for clarity and discernment. And that speaks, and I hope it will speak to these people who are listening. That prayer for clarity and discernment is a prayer to put the toughest guards on that gate. Because I realize that mind is the gatekeeper. That mind, having it open to your words and your will in this world, being open to your voice and not just anyone who wishes to take control. That mind is the gatekeeper, Lord. That's why I always pray for clarity and discernment. Help me walk in the light of truth. Help me carry the light through the darkness and bring people to truth. I give you thanks for the blessings. I give you thanks for being washed in the blood. Your son, scourged, tortured, murdered on that cross to redeem what could not be redeemed. That is the promise. That is the covenant that I hold with you. And that is whom I ever serve. May my mind serve as a gatekeeper to keep me honest on that path. For the people that have sinister intent to mislead and to misguide, let my soul be protected, because I have kept my mind sharp and I've kept my focus, Lord, on you. pray these things in the name of the risen Christ. Amen and amen. I appreciate you guys being here, man. Thank you. Thank you very much for everything. I know I took up about 2.5 hours of your day today, but I wanted to cover all of this, and I wanted to make sure that I was heard. I wanted to make sure that I was really, really reaching you guys, and I wanted to make clear the importance of these things and why they are important. Because if you don't know why it's important, I could tell you it's important all day long. If you don't know why, then we're all missing the mark. And what is the actual literal etymological translation for sin? To miss the mark, right? I didn't want to miss that mark today, so hopefully I did you all right, man. Guys, I'm going to pass around a little digital collection plate. If anybody wants to throw me something, that's cool. Again, I am getting ready to start a new crane gig this coming week. So, it's not like it's absolutely necessary, but I always like a little bit of help. It's fun. If anything that I said reached you and you feel like I earned it, because you guys honor me just by being here, man. And I try to honor you by bringing that message in a way that you can understand and relate to. So I try to deliver my part. Anyway, guys, I'm on Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, blah, blah, blah. You guys know the drill. But look, what's more important to me is that you guys get something out of it. Here's something you can do. You can help share the message. If you got your own social media platforms online, if you got your own Facebook, Instagram, whatever, tell them, fat, toothless, crippled, crane operator with some opinions, get some rants and raves a couple hours every Sunday. But here's what you can do, not just for me, but for yourself. Mike, if you're here, Stone, I didn't see you, but if you're here, live the 3, baby. Hashtag live the 3. What is the 3? The signal to noise ratio is all jacked up. They will try to bury you in the noise. You got to be that signal that cuts through the noise, keeps people walking in the light of truth. They will try to tell you that you are buried in darkness. They will demoralize you, dehumanize you with the darkness. You have got to be that light that breaks through the darkness, leading to the third and final, the iron rule. You got to be strength in a world full of weakness. I'm talking about strength here, but here and here and here. Why? Because without strength, nothing else matters. If you don't have strength, you will not be able to punch that signal through the noise. If you don't have strength, you will not be able to carry that light through the darkness. Who knows what great things have died out of the world? What beauty has died out of the world for want of the strength to survive? You didn't think I pulled Bruce Lee out of my butt on the way out, did you? I love you guys, man. Live the 3. God bless you all of you, man. I really appreciate the hell out of you being here and continued support. I love you all. Take good care of yourselves. Take good care of each other. Eyes on the prize, baby. Spoiler alert. I read the book. We win. God bless you all, man. See you next Sunday. Peace. Man, love y'all, man.